Chapter 855. You're actually such a Madame Dai. Everyone present looked surprised. Many people had already re-evaluated Gu Yundong's status in their hearts. Miss Bao was even more shocked. She actually didn't guess. Yes, Nie Shuang had said that the third boss of New Tea Pavilion had the surname Gu. Moreover, she came and went in the hall as she pleased and chatted happily. Why didn't she think in that direction? Miss Bao was extremely vexed. To think she said that she knew everything about the prefectural city. Her face hurt. However, among the people present, one of them was even more shocked by Madame Dai's words. Her face turned pale, and her legs were so weak that she could not stand. She sat on the ground. Why? How could that be? Was she the boss? The boss of the Gu family? Then why didn't she say anything? Was she deliberately watching her make a fool of herself? Wei Lan was the first to see it. Seeing this, she sighed inwardly and walked over to help her. Get up first. Later, go and apologize to Boss Gu. Perhaps Boss Gu won't make things difficult for you on account of Madame Dai. Qiuyue suddenly pinched the back of her hand. Her neatly trimmed nails still scratched a bloody mark on the back of her hand. Hiss! Wei Lan cried out in pain. Qiuyue, let go. However, Qiuyue raised her head and looked at her with hatred in her eyes. You did it on purpose. You know that she's the boss of the Gu family, right? That's why you worked so hard to please her, but you deliberately didn't tell me. I didn't. You did. Qiuyue grabbed her hand. You watched as I spoke ill of her behind her back. You didn't tell me anything and waited for this moment, right? Wei Lan, you're too sinister. You're simply crazy. Whether you believe it or not, I really didn't know that she was the owner of the Gu family. After I found out, I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't find you. You went to look for Madame Dai. Wei Lan pulled her hand back. Looking at Qiuyue, who only had resentment in her eyes and did not know how to repent, she completely lost the desire to talk to her. She stood up and said coldly, You're on your own. Then, she walked towards Gu Yundong. At this moment, Madame Dai pulled Gu Yundong and introduced her formally again. This is the third boss of New Tea Pavilion, Gu Yundong. She is very busy, so she did not have time to come here after opening. If we had not written to her to urge her, she might not have come. She is so heartless to throw this shop to us. There was intimacy in her words, and she sounded even more serious. Everyone present could tell that this boss Gu had a very high status in New Tea Pavilion. Gu Yundong said helplessly, I'm not as heartless as Auntie says. Look, I came immediately after you sent me a letter. See how loyal I am to you. Madame Dai leaned closer to her and whispered, If you're really loyal, teach me how to put on your makeup another day. Gu Yundong was speechless. You're actually like this, Madame Dai. She smiled and nodded. All right. That's good. Madame Dai was instantly satisfied. Since you're here today, I have something to tell you. Let's find a room. Gu Yundong nodded. Madame Dai greeted everyone and excused herself. The others had the painting in their hands. They knew that the two of them had something to say, so they did not ask them to stay. Miss Bao wanted to know more about Gu Yundong. Unfortunately, she was glared at by her elders, so she could only find another opportunity. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 856. You have good eyes. Gu Yundong and Madame Dai walked towards the backyard. However, when they reached the screen, she stopped in her tracks. Madame Dai asked, What's wrong? I'll introduce some people to Auntie. Gu Yundong pointed at Yunshu and the others who were sitting on chairs and talking to someone not far away. They had agreed to let them wait in the room, but it seemed like they could not wait any longer. They had already come to the hall. Not only was he here, but he and Yuanji were also playing with two other children of similar age. The four of them leaned on the table and looked at a painting. Eldest Aunt Gu was watching them from the side. The other two children's families were also present. However, perhaps because they could not speak to Eldest Aunt Gu, they remained silent and drank tea and ate. When Gu Yundong and Madame Dai walked over, the two madams stood up. Gu Yundong nodded at them before introducing Gu Dafeng to Madame Dai. This is my aunt Gu Dafeng. Madame Dai was surprised. You found her. She knew that Gu Yundong was looking for her eldest aunt and uncle. The last time Dai Wenhuo went back, he did not mention this to her. That was why she was so surprised. Gu Yundong smiled. Yes, I did. Then she introduced Yunshu and Yuanji. Madame Dai looked at the two obedient young kids and could not help but say, "Are your younger siblings so lovable?" Yunshu nodded. "Auntie, you have keen eyes." Madame Dai was stunned. Then she covered the corners of her mouth and smiled. She said to Gu Yundong, "As expected, he's your younger brother. It's obvious that he learned it from you." No, she was wronged. Gu Yundong held her forehead and instructed Yunshu and the rest to have fun. She had something to discuss with Madame Dai. Eldest Aunt Gu said, "Go ahead. I'll take care of them." The two of them left the hall and went to the room at the back. As soon as they left, the two madams who were originally not talking to Eldest Aunt Gu immediately came over curiously and asked, "Is Boss Gu your niece?" There were also people who heard this and came over to inquire. When Yunshu and Yuanji saw this, they felt that something was wrong and hurriedly pulled Eldest Aunt Gu back to the room. On the other hand, the two children had become familiar with Yunshu and followed her with their short legs. The child's family was speechless. However, the people in the hall did not quiet down because of their departure. Instead, the discussion became more and more intense. Still, no one knew which family Gu Yundong belonged to. After some guesses, there was no result. Even so, they all liked the paintings she took out. Although some people were unlucky and only drew the simplest ones, it did not stop them from admiring it. Initially, Gu Yundong thought that some people would lose interest in leaving New Tea Pavilion after the matter with the two madams was over. But now no one was willing to leave. Gu Yundong was very satisfied with this scene, and so was Madame Dai. When the two of them entered the room, Madame Dai heaved a sigh of relief and said, "I heard about Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian. It's all thanks to you being present today. Otherwise, if we let them continue arguing, we wouldn't be able to do business." She frowned. "I'm afraid they won't have the face to come again in the future." Gu Yundong had also guessed that Mrs. Yu might come again, but Mrs. Tian might not. "Auntie, I think we lack a shopkeeper." Madame Dai clapped her hands. "I was just about to tell you about this." As soon as she finished speaking, a sobbing voice suddenly came from outside the door. "Madame Dai, Boss Gu, I was wrong. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 857. Returning to her original form. The sudden sound stunned the two of them. The maidservant standing behind Madame Dai frowned and bowed for instructions. "Madam, can you let me go out and deal with it?" Madame Dai looked at Gu Yundong. "What are your plans?" "Auntie, you can make the decision. If I go, I'm afraid she won't be convinced." Madame Dai nodded and instructed the maidservant behind her, "Yuju, go ahead and let her understand what she did wrong." "Yes." Yuju nodded at the two of them and opened the door of the room. She looked at Qiuyue, who was kneeling outside the door. This room was specially spared by Gu Yundong. It was in a corner beside the kitchen warehouse and was used as an office. It was quite far from the room where the other guests were, and was not easy to see. Therefore, Qiuyue's commotion did not disturb the other guests. Seeing Yuju, Qiuyue hurriedly knelt down and took a few steps forward. "Sister Yuju, please help me plead with Madam. I was wrong. I was really wrong." Yuju looked down at her. "What did you do wrong?" "I didn't know Boss Gus' identity. I was disrespectful to Boss Gu. I deserved to die. Yuju shook her head in disappointment. She still did not know what was wrong. Even if Boss Gu didn't reveal her identity, she's still a guest. There's no reason for New Tea Pavilion to chase guests out. Qiuyue felt wronged and cried uncontrollably. "Yes, I was too anxious. I just heard the two young masters say that they wanted to stay here until closing time. They also wanted to tour all the rooms here, so I thought wrongly." "Were you thinking in the wrong direction?" Yuju sneered. When New Tea Pavilion first opened, many people had the same idea. They wanted to see the other rooms in the backyard, but how did Madame and Miss Nia deal with them? "Have you forgotten?" Qiuyue's face turned pale. Yuju said, "Madame has repeatedly reminded you that if you encounter a guest with such a request, You have to tactfully explain to the other party that this is not in line with the rules. If you encounter someone who is pestering you endlessly, you have to forcefully carry them out. But what about you? Not to mention that Boss Gu did not make a request in front of you. Even if she did, the first thing you should do is not to chase the guest away. Qiuyue was completely speechless. She was just thinking that she was with Madame Dai. Such a small matter. Yunshu sighed in her heart and shook her head. You don't have to stay in New Tea Pavilion in the future. Go pack up and return to the Dai residence in a while. Qiuyue suddenly raised her head and immediately kowtowed on the ground to beg for mercy. No, Sister Yunshu, I was wrong. Madam Boss Gu, I was wrong. Please don't chase me away. How many people wanted to come to New Tea Pavilion but could not? Madam had once said that if they could do it well in New Tea Pavilion in the future, when the shop opened elsewhere, old people like them could be promoted as shopkeepers. At that time, they would be much better than the maidservants and grannies in the residence. If there was someone with outstanding ability, Madam would even strip them of their slave status and live a glorious life. This was a job that many people would envy. Qiuyue knew that even Yunshu, who was in front of her, was tempted. Now she had finally reached this step with great difficulty. Yet she was going to be beaten back to her original state? No, that's not right. It's worse than the original. She had already been abandoned by Madam. Even if she returned to the Dai residence, it was impossible for her to do the same job as before. She would probably be exiled to the manor and die of old age there. Qiuyue cried bitterly, but Yunshu frowned. She found two old women from the kitchen who had come out to watch the show and quickly pulled her down. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 858. Candidate for the Shopkeeper. Qiuyue was pulled down, and it finally quieted down outside the door. In the room, Madame Dai could not help but shake her head and say, "It's my fault for not recognizing people. I've troubled you. Auntie, you're being too serious. People change. How can I blame you? Besides, I didn't suffer any grievances. She just had a bad attitude. She didn't hit or scold me. It was just that this attitude was not suitable for New Tea Pavilion. Forget it, let's not talk about her. Let's talk about the shopkeeper. It was just a maidservant." Madame Dai would not really take it to heart. It wasn't that she couldn't leave this shop. Instead, the shopkeeper's matter was the most important thing. In fact, there was a shopkeeper in New Tea Pavilion in the beginning. She was also found by Madame Dai. Moreover, she had been a shopkeeper in a jewelry pavilion in the past. She was also capable. Madame Dai trusted her and complied with all aspects. Logically speaking, it was not a problem to manage this milk tea shop. That person was also very confident at first, but after more than 10 days, she suddenly suggested that she was not qualified and asked Madame Dai to choose another talent. Later on, Madame Dai learned that although this shopkeeper had worked at the jewelry pavilion in the past, she also served some madams and young ladies. However, it was still very different from this milk tea shop. First of all, the madams and young ladies of the real rich families rarely went to the jewelry pavilion personally, because they felt that there were too few. Instead, the shop staff had to customize for them, and took the latest products from the shop to their residences. Secondly, the guests who came to the jewelry pavilion wouldn't come in batches like this. Those with insufficient status would be entertained by other waiters, and those with high status would be invited to the backyard to be received one-on-one. Thirdly, the shopkeeper's previous jewelry shop was not big, so this shopkeeper actually did not have any powerful backing. She was not confident and bowed too much to customers. This led to her being the same in the milk tea shop. She did not look as comfortable as Qiuyue and Wei Lan, who were maidservants from the Dai mansion and Ye mansion. Madame Dai could not help but sigh in her heart. She wanted to find someone who could stand up straight, but such a person had the backing of a master. It was not easy for her to poach them. It couldn't be helped. The shopkeeper of New Tea Pavilion was gone just like that. When Yundong went to the Dai residence that day, Madame Dai had told her about these problems while she was putting on makeup. Therefore, Yundong had been thinking about this shopkeeper problem for the past 2 days. However, she did not have such connections. She still had to rely on Madame Dai or Nie Shuang. Auntie, since you're talking about the shopkeeper, do you have someone in mind? At the mention of this, Madame Dai's face finally lit up. There's someone. I visited a friend of mine today because of her. My friend's family is in the capital. A few days ago, a nanny came back from the capital and said that she was here to retire. In fact, she didn't want to get involved in the disputes of the capital's main family. This nanny has some ability. The young lady of that family learned the rules from her. She has really seen the world. I finally convinced her to come to this shop tomorrow to take a look. When the time comes, I'll try my best to let her stay. A nanny from the capital? Although she's here to retire, she's not old. She doesn't need to do anything in this shop. She's just here to oversee it. With her around, such a thing will definitely not happen today. When I was young, I was also in the capital and had to receive a few pointers from her. As long as she's willing to come, it won't be a problem. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 859. Gu Dafeng's target is firm. Madame Dai explained the nanny's situation in detail. This nanny was a rather transparent person. Since she was unwilling to get involved in those disputes, she naturally would not interfere much in the residences when they arrived at the Xuanhe prefecture. If not for Madame Dai's early arrival, the nanny would have packed her bags and planned to go to the manor to truly retire. In any case, since she was unwilling to care about the matters in the residence, wouldn't she be able to help her manage the matters in the shop? Madame Dai was quite confident. Her milk tea shop was so novel. Madame Qiuyue would definitely like it. Yundong nodded. All right, we'll come back tomorrow. Madame Dai heaved a sigh of relief. I was thinking of calling all the workers and cooks in New Tea Pavilion over to meet her. You can also take the opportunity to see which people are not suitable and let them go back. Madame Dai was also very helpless. Who asked the people she liked to have problems? It was the same for the previous shopkeeper. Today, Xiaoyi had directly violated the taboo of New Tea Pavilion. Her ability to choose people was too trash. Gu Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. Logically speaking, with Madame Dai's ability, she should not have done this. Otherwise, she would not be able to become the mistress of a family and manage the huge backyard of the Dai residence. She was the one who chose the servants in the Dai residence. Didn't the maidservants who served her know the rules and do things? However, she had suffered setbacks in the business world time and time again, causing her to lose her temper. This milk tea shop was currently the most popular. Madame Dai felt that Gu Yundong was a lucky star, and she needed her to control the situation. Gu Yundong had no objections to seeing Madame Qiuyue tomorrow. The two of them discussed the shopkeeper for a long time. It was not until the shop was closed that Yunshu came to remind them of the time. Madame Dai immediately asked Yunshu to buy some food from a restaurant not far away. They would eat dinner in the shop, so that they wouldn't go back too late. Besides, Gu Yundong wanted to show Yunshu and Yuanji the rooms at the back. Speaking of this, Madame Dai was proud. Who asked you not to come when you opened for business back then? When this shop was just renovated, Nie Shuang and I liked it very much. Nie Shuang even said that she wouldn't go back. She would switch to a different room every day and stay here in the future. It's a good opportunity to look after the shop. Gu Yundong could not help but want to laugh. Then why didn't you agree? Don't. The Nie family will settle scores with me later. As the two of them spoke, they led Yunshu and the others to visit the rooms one by one. The two children were overjoyed. Even eldest Aunt Gus' eyes were shining. After walking around, the sky was already a little dark. Only then did Gu Yundong bring Yunshu and Yuanji, who were still extremely excited, as well as eldest Aunt Gu, who seemed to have a certain goal in her eyes and was becoming more and more determined, back to the small courtyard. As soon as eldest Aunt Gu entered the house, she could not wait to return to her room. She said that she wanted to tidy up the wooden carvings. She could clearly feel how successful Gu Yundong was today. The business of the two shops was booming. If Yundong could make something out of nothing, so could she. Even if she couldn't compare to Yundong, as long as she worked hard, she could also have her own shop in the future. Her life would definitely get better and better. At this moment, Gu Dafeng's goal was exceptionally firm. The next day, Yunshu and Yuanji followed Gu Dajiang to Tianhai Academy and saw the stone wall engraved with names. As Gu Dajiang was leading them, the two of them even entered the academy. After seeing this academy that had 100 years of history, they were overwhelmed with emotions the entire day. Meanwhile, Gu Yundong brought Tong Shuitao to the milk tea shop again. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 860. This person is good. Nie Shuang was also here. She was the first to arrive and was already eating in the hall. Madame Dai went to fetch Madame Qiuyue. As soon as they entered, everyone in New Tea Pavilion was present. It was Gu Yundong's first time seeing Madame Qiuyue. How should she put it? Madame Dai was right. Madame Qiuyue was good. When she pulled a long face, even Gu Yundong felt a little uneasy. Her hands and feet were placed very properly, and she did not dare to look around. It was exactly the same feeling as when she met the dean in elementary school in her previous life. It was simply sour and refreshing. If she was standing in the crowd like this, who would dare to quarrel in New Tea Pavilion? Who would dare? Anyway, Gu Yundong did not dare. However, she stopped pulling a long face and only smiled slightly. The expression on her face instantly became approachable and kind. Even the waiter of New Tea Pavilion dared to joke with her. Most importantly, Madame Qiuyue was multi-talented. She was proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She was omnipotent in brewing tea and making incense. Even if a noble old lady came, Madame Qiuyue could accompany her for most of the day and not bring any awkwardness. Stay. Such a person had to stay. However, Gu Yundong did not show too much enthusiasm. Madame Qiuyue was obviously very opinionated. If you were too enthusiastic, she would not be too happy. She introduced the situation of the milk tea shop as usual. Gu Yundong answered Madame Qiuyue's questions in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. After walking around, the two of them chatted the most. There were specializations in the industry. Madame Qiuyue did not know much about business, but she knew how to read people, teach people, read accounts, and get along with customers. It was enough. After Madame Qiuyue finished asking, she told them to consider it. Nie Shuang was a little disappointed, but Gu Yundong and Madame Dai's eyes lit up. When Madame Dai brought her back, she couldn't help but say, "My milk tea shop will definitely be good in the future, right? Then you're lucky to have met such a scheming little girl." "Nanny, are you coming tomorrow?" Madame Qiuyue sat in the carriage and closed her eyes in silence for a while before saying with a smile, "Yes, it's good to work in another environment." Madame Dai became happy. After sending Madame Qiuyue back, she returned to the milk tea shop and announced such good news. Nie Shuang's eyes lit up. Although Gu Yundong was also happy, she looked much calmer than expected. However, before she left, she specially said to Su Qing, "Learn more from Madame Qiuyue in the future, especially when it comes to how she treats others. It will be good for you." From the looks of it, Madame Dai would definitely open a milk tea shop elsewhere in the future. Now that the prefecture magistrate Dai was being placed in an important position, he would probably be transferred back to the capital by the emperor in 2 years. Madame Dai might have already found a suitable shop in the capital. If Su Qing learned more, even if she didn't go to the capital in the future, she could still go to other county cities to be a master. Gu Yundong returned to the small courtyard and realized that eldest Aunt Gu was still in her room. She seemed to have been in the house for the entire day. Gu Yundong stood outside the window and looked, only to find that she was muttering to the wooden carvings. She did not know what she was thinking. Her uncle sat on a chair beside her and shushed her softly. On the third day, Gu Yundong had just woken up when Gu Dafeng carried her bag and prepared to leave. Gu Yundong was stunned for a moment and quickly stopped her. "Aunt, where are you going?" If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 861. Let's do it today. Gu Dafeng looked at her bag in high spirits. "I'm going to the market to sell wooden carvings." "Now?" "Yes, I prepared for a day yesterday. I set a price for each wooden sculpture and memorized it. I'm prepared to do something big today." What she did not say was that she had rehearsed in her room for a long time yesterday. She had practiced how to receive guests, how to speak, and how to treat people who made things difficult for her. First of all, she had to smile. Yundong had always been smiling when she treated the two quarreling madams that day. However, she could not be afraid and let others think that she was easy to bully. Dafeng was a little regretful now. In the past, when Bian Han went to sell the wooden carvings, she did not go with him. Otherwise, she would not be so inexperienced. Yundong did not expect her to be so well prepared. At this moment, if given a lever, she seemed to be able to prop up an entire planet. She smiled and stepped forward. "Oh, go with eldest aunt. No need, no need. How can I rely on you for everything? I'm already an adult and you're elder. I can't keep asking you to take care of me. I'll go myself. It's fine. If I can't sell them today, I can continue tomorrow. I'll slowly figure it out. It won't always fail to sell." Yundong really had a good impression of eldest Aunt Gu. She thought about Qiuyue, and then looked at eldest Aunt Gu. She knew that old Gu was a blind fool. He did not value his eldest son and daughter, who were really promising. He only knew how to torture them and specially dote on those useless people. It would be strange if he had a good ending. Then I'll send eldest aunt over. It's your first time going to the market, so you definitely don't know the way. By the time you find the place, it might be noon. There won't be any place for you to set up at the market. Dafeng thought about it and agreed. All right, then bring me there. But we've agreed that you'll go after that. Of course. I'll come back after sending eldest aunt off. I guarantee that I won't even enter the market. I'll let eldest aunt do everything herself. Dafeng smiled and followed her into the carriage. Tong Shuetao drove them there. Yundong was a woman of her word. When they arrived outside the market, she put Dafeng down and waved goodbye to her. Dafeng entered the market, but Yundong did not leave. She asked Tong Shuetao to watch the carriage and followed her. Yes, she was just curious about what eldest aunt would do. She was purely curious. Unbeknownst to Dafeng, her tail had been behind her. When she reached the entrance of the market, she could not help but tighten her grip on her bag. After hesitating for a moment, she strode in. She remembered that Yundong had told her that the first seats in the market were the mother and daughter pair who sold flowers. The young lady's name was Xiao Yuan, and she was about 10 years old. Therefore, as soon as she entered, Dafeng looked in that direction, and indeed saw the stall with more than 20 bright potted plants in front of her. The person sitting behind the flowers with a small stool was a young lady. The young lady was watering the flowers with a kettle. She looked serious and obedient, just as Yundong had described. Dafeng immediately became happy and walked up to them. The little girl looked up and immediately put on a smile. "Aunt, do you want to buy flowers?" Dafeng shook her head and asked, "Is your name Xiao Yuan?" "Yes, Auntie knows me." Dafeng's eyes lit up even more. Her happy expression made Xiao Yuan's mother, Madame Fan, who was arranging the flowers, immediately vigilant. She stood in front of Dafeng and frowned. "What's the matter?" "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 862. First Aunt's Voice. Dafeng was stunned and became a little nervous. Did they see through her, because she was from the countryside? Did the people in the prefectural city not like her? No, Yundong had said that Xiao Yuan and her daughter were very friendly. Hence she hurriedly explained, "Don't misunderstand. My niece said that you sell flowers here, so I came over to ask if it's true?" Mrs. Fan was suspicious. "Your niece's? Her surname is Gu. Do you still remember the girl who bought 20 pots of flowers for her mother last time?" Xiao Yuan immediately stood up happily. I remember. Is Sister Gu your niece?" "Yes, I'm her aunt." Madame Fan was also a little happy. Others might not remember, but Yundong and the rest remembered very clearly. She was the first customer to buy 20 pots of flowers in one go, and she even helped them chase away Shopkeeper Pan. Ever since Shopkeeper Pan left, they had been selling flowers here smoothly. Now that she heard that the other party was her aunt, she quickly greeted her warmly. "So it's sister-in-law Gu. Are you here to buy something? What do you want to buy? I'll tell you where to go." No, no, no. I'm not buying anything. I'm here to sell something. Madame Fan was confused. Selling things. She could not help but look at the bag in her hand. Gu Dafeng coughed lightly and squatted down to open the bag. Those are wooden carvings made by my husband. I want to sell them here. The moment the bag was opened, Xiao Yuan exclaimed, "They're so beautiful." Gu Dafeng took a small item and handed it to her. "This is for you." Xiao Yuan quickly rejected her. "No, no. Auntie, you're selling it. Take it. It's not difficult. I was originally going to give it to you." Gu Dafeng knew about Xiao Yuan and her daughter, so she had prepared one in advance. Bian Han had casually carved them, so they were not very complicated. They were very simple flowers. "Then I can't take it either. How about this? Accept this wooden flower, and tell me what to pay attention to when setting up a stall here. I don't understand anything. Teach me. Take this as a payment for my hard work." Xiao Yuan looked at her mother. She liked the flower very much. Madame Fan thought about it and nodded. Only then did Xiao Yuan thank Gu Dafeng and take the wooden flower. Then Madame Fan told Gu Dafeng about the rules of setting up a stall in the market. The first thing she did was to pay 5 copper coins to rent a small stall. With a stall, she could buy and sell. There were also people who could not be offended. What time would the market close tonight, and what time would the market open? Gu Dafeng listened carefully. Coincidentally, there was an empty space beside Xiao Yuan. Madame Fan took Gu Dafeng to rent a stall first, then she untied the bag beside her. At first, Gu Dafeng did not dare to make a sound. When she heard someone shouting beside her, she followed suit. Gu Dafeng used to be quite loud. Now that she opened her mouth, she suppressed the voices of the surrounding vendors. The surroundings instantly fell silent as everyone looked at her. Gu Dafeng did not notice. Just as Madame Fan was about to remind her, the vendors started to shout again, as if they wanted to suppress Gu Dafeng's voice. Madame Fan was speechless. Madame Fan and Xiao Yuan were both relatively shy people. Their voices were not loud, so their business was average. At this moment, because the surrounding vendors seemed to be competing, the noise in this area was especially loud, attracting many customers. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 863. Getting more bold. Gu Yundong almost died of laughter when she saw this. Eldest aunt had pulled in this business with a good voice. A few people came to Gu Dafeng's stall to take a look. There was indeed someone who liked her small wooden carvings. There were even people who went to Xiao Yuan's shop to look at the flowers. In an instant, there were more people here. Gu Yundong felt that her eldest aunt was good at doing business. Her talent had been buried in the past. She stood outside and watched for a while. When she saw that there was no problem, she turned around and left. After getting back into the carriage, Tong Shuetao asked, "Miss, are we going back?" "Let's not go back for now. Let's go to Brother Xiao's medicine shop." Yes. Xiao Qingyuan's pharmacy was almost done, and the person who renovated it was still Feng Danning. The decorations of New Tea Pavilion really advertised Feng Danning. The current Feng Danning could not leave at all to return to Yongfu village. Business came one after another, and he could not handle it at all. However, when he heard that Xiao Qingyuan was going to renovate the place, he still came personally without a word. Feng Danning still remembered that it was Gu Yundong who had helped him a lot. From the Gu family's green brick house to the county's Gus, to the prefectural city's Gus, and then to the milk tea shop in the prefectural city, all these were brought to him by Gu Yundong. If she hadn't given him every chance, he would probably still be wandering around the village. Perhaps even the pitiful business in the county city would have been wiped out by his senior brother. Therefore, as long as the Gu family needed it, Feng Danning would definitely come to help without saying anything. As for the Xiao family, they belonged to the Gu family anyway. Feng Danning was tidying up the shop when Gu Yundong walked in. Gu Yundong greeted him. "Uncle Feng, you've worked hard. Where's Brother Xiao?" "He's in the backyard storeroom." Gu Yundong nodded and walked towards the storeroom. She did not notice Feng Danning's hesitant expression behind her. When she reached the backyard, she heard a voice from the storeroom. Xiao Qingyuan was looking at the herbs. The shop was about to open, so the herbs were naturally in place. Yundong looked at his serious back view, tilted her head and smiled. What are you laughing at? Qiuyue didn't even turn around when he heard her footsteps and knew that she was here. He put down the herb in his hand, clapped his hands lightly, and walked out of the storeroom. Why are you here? Yundong looked around and saw that there was no one around. Then she whispered into his ear. I missed you. Qiuyue's pupils constricted as he pulled her into the storeroom. Yundong was stunned. The smell of traditional Chinese medicine filled his nose. Then the door of the storeroom was closed. Qiuyue pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly. Say that again. Yundong smiled. I missed you. Qiuyue lowered his head and accurately found her lips, covering them heavily. She buried her head in his arms. You're getting bolder. From holding hands at the beginning, to hugging, and now, what a scheming fellow. He did not hesitate at all. Next, should I? When you're of marriageable age, let's get married, Qiuyue said. Yundong thought to herself. As expected. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 864. Consummation Problem. Yundong looked up and said with a smile. My father can't bear to marry me off so early. Then I can marry into your family. Without any hesitation, Qiuyue answered quickly. Yundong choked and could not help but laugh. I'm still young. You'll be of marriageable age next month. You're not young anymore. I mean, I haven't grown up yet. Qiuyue froze for a moment. His hands that were holding her felt a little warm. Yundong seemed to hear him swallow his saliva gently. After a while, he said in a slightly hoarse voice, we can get married first and consummate our marriage later. Yundong choked on her own saliva. She covered her mouth and coughed twice. Consummate the marriage later? You look like you want to kiss, hug, and lift me up when no one is paying attention. Can you hold it in after getting married? It would be strange if I believed you. Qiuyue said. Yundong, your father has your mother and your siblings. But I'm alone. Every night when I go home, the house is cold and cheerless. There's no one to talk to. Sometimes, I can't sleep, but I don't know what to do. It's not convenient to talk to you if I want to look for you. I just think that as long as I can see you every day, it's enough. Yundong looked up and met his gloomy gaze. She pursed her lips slightly. Oh no, he was using this trick again. What if her heart softened? Yundong opened her mouth. At this moment, a strong voice came from outside the door. Boss Xiao, where are you? Yundong could clearly feel that Qiuyue's arms were tense, and his aura instantly turned cold. Boss Xiao, have you settled the matter I told you? The voice was getting closer and closer. Yundong also recognized the voice. It was Dr. Xiong. She took a step back and left Qiuyue's arms. Then the air around her turned even colder. She heard Qiuyue's low curse. This bear, he tidied Yundong's hair and said. I'll go out and see him. Yeah. Qiuyue opened the door of the storeroom. Yundong turned around and vaguely heard him mutter before he left. It was this bear who agreed. Yundong. I didn't. Don't talk nonsense. Who was going to agree? Who? Come back here, and explain yourself. Yundong stood rooted to the ground and stared. In the end, she did not chase after them. She tidied her clothes and stayed in the storeroom for a while. She pretended to look at the herbs before walking out slowly. In the courtyard, Qiuyue had already spoken to Dr. Xiong. However, Qiuyue's face was cold and he looked very unhappy. Although Dr. Xiong was tough and had a bad temper, that was based on his medical skills. He had confidence in this aspect and was very persistent in certain aspects. That was why he was so stubborn. Moreover, Qiuyue usually tolerated him and gave him enough freedom to perform. Therefore, Dr. Xiong had full authority over medical herbs. But now this expression, Dr. Xiong said a few words to him, but he did not get a response. Especially since the other party's aura was cold. It really made him a little afraid. Could it be that the request he made just now was really too much? After all, what he said now was not related to medical skills. Dr. Qiuyue did not have much confidence. Just as he was wondering if he should leave, he looked up and saw Yundong. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 865, Jiang Bao. Dr. Qiuyue immediately heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly ran to her. Miss Gu. Dr. Qiuyue, why are you looking for Brother Xiao? Yundong glanced sideways at Qiuyue, who was walking over. The latter looked helpless, but his face was no longer cold. Dr. Qiuyue turned around and saw that he seemed to have become a different person. His eyes widened. Hey, you actually have two faces. Your attitude towards me and towards Yundong is too different. Dr. Qiuyue's temper flared up again. He snorted coldly and simply said to Yundong, I want a guy, but he keeps dilly-dallying and disagreeing. He's a man, so can't he be more straightforward? Must I leave behind so many important things to remind him again and again? Yundong was curious. What guy? He's a very smart shop assistant. His words are especially to my liking, and he recognizes medicinal herbs very quickly. Yundong looked at Qiuyue, who said, Jiang Bao. Jiang. Wasn't this Qiuyue's assistant from the county medicine shop? Qiuyue nodded. That's him. I didn't say that I wouldn't let him come over. Dr. Qiuyue was furious. But you said that you would only allow him to come next year. How can that do? The shop is about to open. Besides, there's no difference between a few months late and a few months early. He's getting married next year. Dr. Qiuyue snorted coldly. Is getting married as important as being a worker in the prefectural city? The sooner he comes, the sooner he can become successful in the future. Do you know how important a few more months of studying here is to his life? So what if he gets married? Marriage is only 2 to 3 days. Can't we just let him go back on a good day? Yundong could tell that he was a career maniac. Qiuyue could not convince Dr. Qiuyue, so he told Yundong directly, there are many things to prepare before marriage. The procedures are complicated. 2 or 3 days will definitely not be enough. If he comes to the prefectural city, it will be a long journey. I'm afraid it will be inconvenient. His parents and brothers have to settle down first. After he gets married next year, Zhuangzi will also come to the prefectural city. Jiang Bao said that they can come together. Yundong felt that this arrangement was quite good. Although work was important, marriage was even more important. Since the two families were engaged, they had to visit each other often to discuss the details. It couldn't be that Jiang Bao had come to the prefectural city alone, and his parents were the only ones in their family to do everything, right? Then in the future, when Lan Huata married over, wouldn't people gossip about her and say that she was in a hurry? She might not be valued in her husband's family. Moreover, from what Qiuyue said, Jiang Bao agreed to come over after they got married. However, it had to be said that there were indeed people fighting for this talent everywhere. She used to think that Jiang Bao was smart. The first time they met, she had a deep impression of him. Now Dr. Qiuyue had taken a fancy to him. Then will Lan Huar also come to the prefectural city? Yundong had plans to send Lan Huar to New Tea Pavilion again. One Suqing was still too few. Qiuyue didn't know about this. We'll have to wait for them to get married and decide for themselves. Nowadays, when husbands went out to earn money, wives had to stay at home to take care of their parents. However, if Jiang Bao and Lan Huater got married, he might still want to bring her out. As long as Jiang Bao was willing, he would definitely be able to convince his family. Since that was the case, Yundong would not interfere. She would wait for them to make their own decisions. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 866. Want both. Dr. Qiuyue, who was standing at the side, was about to die of anger. How did they manage to talk about love with a living person in front of them, as if he did not exist? Do you really have to wait until after the new year for Jiang Bao to come over? His voice was sharp and noisy for a moment. Finally, Qiuyue turned around to look at him. Seeing that he was a little flustered and exasperated, he said, there are two choices. Firstly, I bring Jiang Bao over. From now on, he will be the only assistant in this pharmacy. Secondly, Jiang Bao will come back in a few months. There can be 2 assistants in the pharmacy, Jiang Bao and Zhou. Dr. Xiong was instantly suffocated. He wanted Jiang Bao and Zhou. Couldn't he choose both? However, looking at Xiaoqing Yuan's implacable appearance, Dr. Xiong ran away. Yundong stared dumbfoundedly at his back as he ran away. After a long while, he finally could not help but laugh out loud. I didn't expect him to be so agile. Ha ha ha, he ran so quickly. Xiaoqing Yuan was also very helpless. This Dr. Xiong was really... Yundong had enough of laughing before he remembered what he had just said. You let Zhou stay in the pharmacy as a shop assistant? Didn't you say that the 4 of them would learn martial arts and be guards in the future? Xiaoqing Yuan said. Zhou recognized that medicinal herb in the manor last time. When I returned, I tested him and found that he was very interested in this aspect and was talented, so I asked for his opinion. He wants to be a shop assistant in this shop and learn more skills. This was his own choice, and Xiaoqing Yuan wouldn't object. In any case, as long as Zhou didn't fall behind in martial arts, it was fine. Yundong was enlightened. No wonder Xiaoqing Yuan did not plan to hire a shop assistant when he arrived at the prefectural city. He already had someone in mind. Since the prefectural city's shop has a candidate, if you want Jiang Bao and Zhou to work here, what about the pharmacy in the county? Just find another one in the county city. The shop there is small and business is average. It's enough for the shopkeeper to prescribe medicine and pick the herbs. Just find a hard-working person to help move things and clean the shop. They don't have to know about medicinal herbs. The doctor in the county's pharmacy was different from Dr. Xiong. Dr. Xiong's medical skills were good, so after arriving at the prefectural city, he looked for medical centers everywhere to compare medical skills with others. When the medicine shop opened, although he would not be like this, he would have to run out a few days a month. Therefore, Jiang Bao and Zhou, who needed to know about medicinal herbs, should be in the pharmacy. The old doctor in the county city liked to stay in his room and not go out. When a patient came, he would treat them and prescribe medicine. If there was none, he would read the medical book himself or organize the herbs. He could stay indoors for an entire day. He would find another assistant later. The old doctor also had the patience to teach him some simple pharmacology. This was what Jiang Bao learned step by step. But when it came to Jiang Bao and Lan Huaner's marriage, Xiaoqing Yuan could not help but look at Yundong again. Now that Dr. Xiong had left, could the topic be? Just as Xiaoqing Yuan was thinking, footsteps came from behind. He closed his eyes silently. Why was it so hard to talk to her alone? Next time, he might as well take her out somewhere private. Yundong. Yundong turned around and saw Feng Danning walking over. She smiled. Uncle Feng, are you done with your work? Basically. Feng Danning walked towards them. This time, Yundong could tell that Uncle Feng had something to say. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 867. Almighty Feng's Concerns. What's wrong, Uncle Feng? Why are you looking for me? Feng Danning smiled uncomfortably. Actually, it's nothing much. I just heard that. He glanced at Yundong. Seeing her confused look, he could not help but lower his voice. I heard that you found your aunt and uncle? Yes, I did. Feng Danning touched his head. Well, congratulations. Thank you, Uncle Feng. Yundong smiled. From the corner of his eye, he saw 2 people standing behind a wall not far away. He kept winking at Feng Danning. When Feng Danning saw this, he opened his mouth but did not know what to say. In the end, he simply said, Then there's nothing else. I'll leave first. When the 2 people behind heard this, they immediately became anxious. Yundong could not help but say, Uncle Feng, you have something to tell me, right? It's fine. Tell me. We're all from Yongfu village. There's nothing to mind. Feng Danning thought for a moment, gritted his teeth, and said, I heard that your uncle also does carpentry. I just want to ask, if you open a shop again in the future, would your uncle help you? Yundong was stunned. She did not expect him to be talking about this. However, it was obvious that Feng Danning was not asking for himself, but for the 2 carpenters. Was he worried that she had a closer candidate and would not need them in the future? Gu Yundong could not help but laugh. She teased, "Uncle Feng, you're now a popular person in the prefectural city. Why? Are you still afraid that you won't have work to do?" What are you talking about? What do you mean by not being popular? Didn't you help me get to where I am today? Otherwise, I wouldn't even be able to walk out of the village. Gu Yundong could understand his worry, but she felt that it was completely unnecessary. Uncle Feng, although my uncle is also a carpenter, he's different from you. His work is more exquisite and there's no conflict. Besides, Uncle Feng, you have a group of people under you now. Your team has already matured. What are you worried about? Feng Danning sighed. Yundong, I'm not afraid that you'll laugh at me. I just feel that you don't need us anymore in the future. I suddenly feel a little flustered. Haha, then I'm fine. I'll go to work. Gu Yundong nodded, and Feng Danning quickly ran away. The two people hiding behind the wall immediately pulled him over, and the three of them muttered to each other. Gu Yundong looked at their backs thoughtfully. Why do I feel like all of them are too dependent on me? Could it be that she was too opinionated? Xiao Qingyuan had wanted to say something a few times, but he was interrupted. He no longer had a temper. However, when he turned his head and saw her frowning as if she was very troubled, he felt that she was cute. He couldn't help but hold her hand. You're very charming. Hence, he would always become someone else's backbone. Not to mention Feng Danning, even the village chief of Yongfu village, Chun Liang, could not help but come to the Gu family to discuss with her when something big happened. His Yundong would become the center of attention wherever he went, making people involuntarily approach him. At this moment, Xiao Qingyuan actually felt an inexplicable sense of pride. Gu Yundong sniggered. Seeing him say such things so seriously, she actually felt a little amused. All right. I'm charming. Doesn't that mean you're even more charming now that you're my fiancé? Xiao Qingyuan suddenly turned around, and his eyes became restless again. He felt that the atmosphere that had disappeared just now had returned. Seeing this, Gu Yundong quickly pulled her hand away and ran away. I'm going to Aunt Kes' house. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 868. Arrangements for Aunt Ke. Gu Yundong ran out of the door and soon disappeared. Today, Yunshu and Yuanji had both gone to Aunt Kes' house. She planned to pick them up. When they arrived at the Ke residence, they saw Aunt Ke happily preparing delicious food for them. Aunt Ke had always been good to children, let alone Yunshu, Yunke, Yuanji, and Madame Yang. But when she saw Gu Yundong, she raised her face again, making Gu Yundong not know whether to laugh or cry. There were still some changes in Aunt Kes' house. There were a few pots of flowers in the corner of the courtyard, which seemed to be given to her by Madame Yang. There were some things for children to play with in the central room, as well as paper, ink, brush, and inkstone. Gu Yundong was silent. It was too lonely for Aunt Ke to live alone, but she refused to retire with him. Her temper was really stubborn. If Gu Yundong talked to her, she would lose her temper. Retirement? Gu Yundong suddenly thought of something. She went up to Aunt Ke and said, "Aunt, have you ever thought about working at New Tea Pavilion? You don't have to do anything. Just help out a little. If you want to rest, rest. If you want to work, work. If you're tired, go to our room to sleep. If you're bored, you can chat with someone. As for the salary, I'll give you a little bit. How about that?" Aunt Kes' hand paused for a moment. That slight movement stunned Gu Yundong. It seemed that Aunt Ke had thought about it. In that case, she had neglected him. Gu Yundong was instantly vexed. However, Aunt Ke snorted and said, "Why would I go? There are so many people. With my temper, I will offend the guests." Gu Yundong smiled and held her hand. "No. Although Aunt Ke is always fierce to me, you're much more patient with children. You also know how to tell stories. Look, Kiki, Yunshu, Yuanji, and the rest like you. Our new tea pavilion also has small guests. You can take care of them, right?" Aunt Ke used to be very good at talking. She remembered that when Nyetsong first saw her, he had reminded her that the children around her were afraid of Aunt Ke because once she pulled them over, she would talk endlessly. However, After spending a year with Yunshu and the rest, Aunt Ke would no longer have such a situation because Yunshu was more eloquent than her. Sometimes, when Aunt Ke told a story, when Yunshu heard something he liked, he would tell her a bunch of random things. Aunt Ke had no room to interrupt. Moreover, this new tea pavilion was opened by her, Nieshuang, and Madame Dai. Nieshuang did not say anything else. Aunt Ke was her biological aunt, and they had a good relationship. Madame Dai also knew Aunt Ke, and the two of them were friends. As for Madame Qiuyue, who had just been hired today, Gu Yundong felt that she and Aunt Ke were probably the same kind of people. They were both smart people who could understand each other without saying much. Perhaps the two of them could even become friends. Actually, Gu Yundong had thought about letting Aunt Ke be the shopkeeper. Unfortunately, she had been rejected by Aunt Ke from the start. She did not want to take on such a responsibility at all, and did not have the time. Therefore, Gu Yundong never mentioned letting Aunt Ke go to New Tea Pavilion again. However, she did not expect that Aunt Ke did not want to be the shopkeeper, and yet she was not against doing things at New Tea Pavilion, where she could interact with so many children. As expected, when Aunt Ke heard the last sentence, she could not hold back her expression and smiled. All right, since you're so sincere, there's no harm in me forcing myself to go. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 869. Gu Yundong's Proposal. Gu Yundong could not help but secretly roll her eyes. You even learned how to speak like me? But Gu Yundong was still very happy that Aunt Ke agreed. However, there was one thing that needed to be mentioned. Don't be too tired. There's no harm in going over later in the morning. There aren't many customers at the beginning anyway. You have to come back early at night. There's no need to wait until after closing. Although your place isn't very far from New Tea Pavilion, it's not too late. Oh, be worried. All right, I understand. Aunt Ke pushed her away. Don't be sticky. Hurry up and ask your mother and the children to wash their hands. It's time to eat. Gu Yundong smiled and went out. After the few of them finished their lunch, she brought them home. Only Bianhan and the Lu family were left at home. Gu Dajiang had brought Yunshu and Yuanji back to Tianhai Academy yesterday, and happened to meet Master Xia. Today, Master Xia had called him to the academy to help copy books, so he was not around. Bianhan sat by the window, and was carving with a piece of wood in his hand. He was very focused. Hearing the voice at the door, he looked up and welcomed his son who ran in. He asked him what had happened when he went out today. Bian Yuanji had told him in detail that ever since he reunited with his parents, he had become especially coquettish and cheerful. Gu Yundong looked at Bianhan, and thought of what Feng Danning had said today. Eldest uncle was indeed more focused on the exquisite work of carving. He could also do some tables and stools. However, he was not used to following the construction team and renovating the shop. Gu Yundong did not think that it was a big deal. It was already very impressive if one's certain skills were superb. He did not have to worry about food and clothes. In the past, when she was in her hometown, there were not many people who hired her uncle to work, so his skills did not improve much. But in recent days, Gu Yundong had seen the wooden carvings and found that they were much more exquisite and complicated. After some thought, Gu Yundong walked to the window. Seeing her coming over, Bianhan looked up and smiled. Yundong, are you looking for me? Yes. Gu Yundong looked at the few small things he had carved today and said, Uncle, have you ever thought of making a set of wooden carvings? A set of wooden carvings? Bianhan did not seem to understand. Gu Yundong said, for example, you can sculpt 12 zodiac signs, calligraphy, and any objects. Then, you can mark these wooden carvings to show that you sculpted them. Some people will have obsessive-compulsive disorder. They might buy other zodiac signs because they like one of them. Some people like to collect such sets. Do you think this is okay? Yuanzi's eyes lit up when he heard that. That's right. You can even sculpt plums, orchids, bamboos, and chrysanthemums. Scholars will definitely like it. The more Bianhan listened, the more excited he became. That's right. Why didn't he think of it? In the past, he always carved anything he thought of. Now that she heard Yundong's words, she suddenly felt enlightened. You're right. I'll start carving the 12 zodiacs now. Yuanji was in a hurry. Father, I'll help you right. Gu Yundong saw that the father and son were immediately busy. She smiled and left. Bianhan and Yuanji were so busy that they forgot the time. They only realized it when the sky gradually darkened. Eldest Aunt Gu was not back yet. Bianhan immediately became anxious. Yuanji, go out and take a look. Why isn't your mother back yet? Yuanji put down his brush and was about to leave when the door to the courtyard opened. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 870. Making money, making money. Bian Yuanji looked up and saw his mother walking in with a flushed face. She was carrying a bag in her left hand and a basket in her right. No one knew what was inside. His face lit up and he quickly ran over. Mother, you're finally back. Gu Dafeng's smile widened. She patted her son's head forcefully and said to Gu Dajiang and Gu Yundong, who had also walked out, Brother Yundong here. This is meat. Cook this for dinner. Gu Dajiang stopped in his tracks and frowned slightly. What happened to your throat? Gu Dafeng coughed lightly. Her throat was indeed very uncomfortable, and her voice was hoarse. Gu Yundong had already guessed it. She must have shouted so hard that her throat was damaged. Sigh, she should have known. She had forgotten to remind her. Unexpectedly, Eldest Aunt was so honest that she insisted on shouting until she could not. My throat is fine. I'll just drink more hot water. Gu Dafeng waved her hand indifferently. She was full of energy now. What was a throat? She didn't even know. Gu Yundong walked forward and took the basket from Gu Dafeng's hand. She removed the cloth covering it and realized that other than a piece of meat, there was also a pot of flowers. It must have been given to her by Xiao Yuan and her daughter. This meat should weigh 2 caddies, right? Aunt, is your business good today? Gu Dafeng chuckled. Seeing that Bianhan had already been carried out by Lu Sheng, she mysteriously walked to the central room and took off the bag on her back. Let me tell you, my business is especially good today. I've sold more than half of the wooden carvings. As she spoke, she opened the bag and everybody saw that there were only a few wooden carvings left inside. They looked quite small. Immediately after, Gu Dafeng searched around her body and took out a cloth bag. Then, she opened the cloth bag and took out a money bag. The money bag was quite heavy. With a light knock, it clanged. One could tell that it was filled with copper coins. Gu Dafeng opened the cloth bag excitedly and poured out the copper coins inside. With a clatter, copper coins covered most of the table. A few children at the side exclaimed, Wow, so much money! Gu Dafeng said proudly, I earned 700 copper coins today. There are so many people in the prefectural city. When I sat in the market and shouted, many people came over. Moreover, they're all quite rich. Other than a few people who bargained a few times, the others bought what they liked. She looked very emotional. It's just that the vendors beside us are working too hard. Their voices are really loud. It's not easy for everyone to live. Gu Yundong was speechless. Eldest Aunt, don't do this tomorrow. Someone would say that she treated the flower and bird market as a vegetable market. However, the others agreed with Gu Dafeng. The children had already started counting the copper coins. Only Gu Dajiang frowned. They're loud, but you're shouting too? Then you don't have to use so much strength, right? If you're like this, you won't even be able to speak tomorrow. How can you sell wooden carvings? Gu Yundong laughed dryly. Father, you're wrong. It's not that Eldest Aunt is following others to shout, but that others are following her. This is all caused by Eldest Aunt. Gu Dafeng felt as if she had been struck by lightning after hearing Gu Dajiang's words. That's right, she was too excited just now and forgot about this. If her throat was damaged, how was she going to do business tomorrow? Chapter 871 Miscalculation. At the thought of this, Gu Dafeng could not help but slap her thigh hard. I miscalculated. Wasn't this the first time she had earned so much money? Wasn't she too happy? In the past, when she was in Jiangyu County, it was her man who sold wooden carvings. He would often bring wooden carvings with a bag to the county city. When he came back, he would bring them back with a bag. He didn't have much money. There were too few people in Jiangyu County who bought the wooden carvings, so this was the first time Gu Dafeng was doing business personally. She was also nervous and thought that it would be good enough if she could sell a few. She did not expect there to be so many rich people in the prefecture capital. She would be more excited if she sold one, and her voice would be higher. After so many times, wouldn't she be unable to care about anything else? Gu Dajiang shook his head and asked Auntie Niu, "Do we have rock sugar chrysanthemum tea at home?" "Yes, my lord." "Make her a cup." Gu Dafeng touched her throat with her fingers and finally felt a little uncomfortable. Bian Han said worriedly, "Rest at home tomorrow. Get your throat better first." "How can I do that? It's not easy for me to get a good start today. Of course, I have to strike while the iron is hot tomorrow." "But," Gu Dafeng glared at him, "you can't speak when your throat hurts, but you don't allow me to gesture with my hands?" Bian Han said helplessly, "Even if you want to sell, there aren't many wooden carvings left at home. You've sold most of them today." The wooden carvings that Gu Dafeng had sold today were all secretly made by him in the Zhou mansion. There were not many of them. For the past few days, because of his poor health, Gu Dajiang had forbidden him from overworking. When he was free, he would sunbathe, sleep, and eat. He had very limited time to carve every day. Therefore, there were not many wooden carvings. Gu Dafeng was stunned when she heard that. That made sense. He couldn't make as fast as she could sell. It was really worrying. At this moment, the children finally finished counting the money. All of them looked very excited. 650 copper coins. "Mother, we're missing 50 copper coins." Bian Yuanji raised his hand and reported the situation. Gu Dafeng slapped his hand away. "Didn't I use it to buy meat? Why is it missing?" "All right, I forgot." He rubbed his head and quickly became happy again. "Mother, you're amazing. You actually earned so much money." "Of course." Gu Dafeng was smug. Gu Yundong also said, "I knew it. Eldest aunt is indeed good at doing business. Look at these copper coins. It takes a few people half a day to count them." Although the current 700 copper coins was nothing to Gu Yundong, it was different for eldest aunt Gu. In the past, she wished that 1 copper coin could be converted into 2 copper coins to spend. Her living expenses were only 2 to 3 taels a year. Now it had only been a day, but she had already earned a quarter's living expenses. How could she not be happy? This meant a lot in itself. As expected, Gu Dafeng became even more excited when she heard Gu Yundong say that. She nodded repeatedly. "I'm just like you." Gu Dajiang was speechless. That was the opposite. It should be that the niece resembled the aunt. However, he still expressed his approval and happily praised eldest sister's achievements today. After he finished speaking, the others immediately praised her. Gu Dafeng felt a little smug. She almost thought that she was about to become the richest man. That night, Gu Dafeng felt satisfied as she ate the 2 pounds of fat she had bought. Chapter 872. Reluctant to spend the silver. But at night, eldest aunt Gu still knocked on Gu Yundong's door. Gu Yundong opened the door, and was stunned to see her. She quickly invited her in. "Aunt, are you looking for me?" Gu Dafeng nodded with a serious expression. Gu Yundong closed the door. Seeing her expression, she could not help but ask, "What's wrong? Did you encounter trouble at the market today?" There's no trouble. The market is pretty good. It's very lively." Gu Dafeng's voice was still very hoarse, and it even seemed to have become more serious. Her voice was so soft that it sounded like she was breathing. Gu Yundong silently looked up at the sky. "Lively? It should be a competition of voices." Gu Dafeng lowered her head and took out a bag of things. Gu Yundong looked over. "Wasn't this the money bag from before?" Gu Dafeng looked at the money bag and smiled in satisfaction. Then she placed it on the table and said, "This is for you." "For me? For what?" Gu Yundong was confused. Gu Dafeng glanced at her from the corner of her eye. "You fed us, clothed us, and provided for our accommodation. You even provided for Yuanzi's studies. Later, you still have to treat your uncle's legs. We can't accept it for nothing, right? I know that you're in charge of the family's money, so I won't give it to your father. You can keep these. Although it's not much, he'll work harder to earn money in the future." Gu Yundong understood that his eldest aunt could not enjoy everything here with a clear conscience. She was a person who could distinguish between gratitude and grudges. This could be seen from the first thing she did after she recovered. She was in a hurry to go to the market to sell wooden carvings. Yundong also knew that they had a good relationship with eldest aunt. An eldest aunt and father had relied on each other since they were young. However, at the end of the day, they were already two families. They could help eldest aunt overcome her difficulties, but they could not help them for the rest of their lives. Thus, Yundong did not stop eldest uncle from continuing to carve. He did not stop eldest aunt from going to the market to sell wooden carvings. Sooner or later, they would have to live on their own. But not now. Yundong picked up the money bag and placed it back in Dafeng's arms. Eldest aunt, I know what you're thinking. But you should take this money back yourself. If you give this money to me now, where will you get the capital to do business? Dafeng blinked. The capital to do business? The carvings were made of wood. Previously, in the Zhou mansion, Mrs. Run had brought it over for them. Back in his hometown, it was Bianhan who went straight to the mountain to cut the tree down. A very thick tree could be used for a long time. However, this prefectural city seemed to disallow people to cut trees at will. Dafeng did not expect this. Furthermore, eldest uncle's skills are getting better and better. In the future, he can even make more complicated wooden carvings that have a better meaning and sell them to those rich families. Such wooden carvings also have a lot of requirements for wood. When the time comes, will you also need silver to buy good wood? Dafeng thought about it and agreed. Then I'll take this money back first. Yes, you should take it back. Yundong nodded with certainty. When eldest aunt earns a lot of money in the future, I won't hide even if you throw silver at me. What nonsense are you talking about? I can't bear to throw money at you. Yundong asked. Eldest aunt, are you reluctant to part with me, or are you reluctant to part with the silver? Of course I can't bear to part with the money. Look at how thick-skinned you are. What's the use of throwing it at you? Eldest aunt Gu was a straightforward person. Since Yundong had said so, she did not insist on giving it to him. She immediately took the money bag and stood up. All right, I won't give it to you first. I'll buy a few caddies of meat later. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 873, Wheelchair. Yundong thought of the fat meat tonight and felt her stomach ache. She said weakly, Aunt, can we buy lean meat next time? You fool. There's no oil on the lean meat, and it's a few copper coins more expensive than fat. Of course the fat is better. It's very fragrant. No, she refused. Dafeng had already left with the money bag. She looked like she was going to sell the wooden carvings another day and buy 2 pounds of fat. Yundong suddenly regretted not taking her money bag. The next day, Dafeng did not go to the market. Firstly, there were not many wooden carvings left. Secondly, she was completely speechless. Thirdly, Yunshu and Yuanji would be returning to Fengkai County tomorrow. The holidays were almost over, and the two of them had to return to school to study. Therefore, on this day, the two of them did not go out to play. They stayed at home to accompany their parents and family to rest. Yuanji couldn't bear to leave them. He stayed by their side for almost the entire day. Dafeng could not speak, so he simply read to her. When Yunshu heard this, he could not help but read as well. The courtyard was filled with their childish voices. Dafeng could not help but smile as she watched. It was great. She had never thought that her son could still study. He was so small, holding a book and shaking his head. Those words that seemed unreachable to her were jumping out of his mouth one by one. Even though she could not understand them, they were really nice. The sun was warm and comfortable. After noon, Qiuyue and Dr. Xiong arrived. Not only did they come, but they also brought something surprising, a wheelchair. The wheelchair was a little heavy, but in everyone's eyes, it was a precious and powerful thing. Qiuyue and Lu Xing carefully placed Bianhan on the wheelchair. Dafeng stood behind him, her eyes shining. Her hands were wet with sweat, and she carefully pushed him a few steps. The wheels rolled on the stone road and landed in Bianhan's ears, almost making him cry tears of joy. Ever since his legs were broken, he had not left the Zhou mansion for more than a year. Dafeng was thin and weak, so she could not carry him at all. In order not to add to her burden, Bianhan had to lie on the bed and solve almost everything. Then they came to the small courtyard. When he went out and entered, he was carried around. Every time, Bianhan would feel very embarrassed. He felt that he had brought a lot of trouble to others. Now that he had this wooden wheelchair, he no longer needed to be carried by others. He was very excited, and his fingers trembled slightly. After Dafeng pushed him around twice, he turned to her and said, "Independent Illinois, try it myself. Then be careful." "Yes, I'm fine." Bianhan exhaled. He wiped his hands on his clothes and held the wheels on both sides. The wheels were made of wood and were very heavy. It took a lot of effort to push the wheelchair forward. Bianhan sat on it and couldn't exert any strength. However, he did not give up. It was not until he was covered in sweat that the wheelchair finally moved forward. Once the wheelchair started walking, due to inertia, it was much easier to push again. Dafeng exclaimed, "That's great." Bianhan turned his head. He was sweating profusely, but the smile on his face was especially satisfied. Then, Dr. Xiong checked his pulse and said that he had recuperated well during this period of time. In a few days, he would be able to treat his legs. The whole family was very happy, but this happiness lasted until night time. There was only sadness left. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 874. Farewell. Dafeng could not bear to part with Yuanji, especially when she saw him sleeping in a small ball between the two of them. His hands were relying on them, and he refused to let go. His face was red and he was smiling. She wanted to accompany him back to Yongfu village. They had just met not long ago, so how could they bear to part? They wished they could be together all the time. That wouldn't do. Yuanzi's studies were more important, and the father had to treat his legs here. She also had to sell wooden carvings to earn money. She couldn't leave. There were many customers in the prefectural city, so there was no need to worry about sales. There was probably no business in the county city. On the other hand, Bianhan looked at her, and then at his son. After a long time he said, "Why don't you accompany Yuanji back to Yongfu village?" Dafeng was surprised. To visit Mulan. Bian Mulan's grave was now in Yongfu village. Speaking of their daughter, the two of them fell silent again. Their hearts ached. Their young daughter was only 20 years old, and had never enjoyed happiness in her life. Why did she? Dafeng's eyes were filled with tears again, and her nose was blocked. She reached out and wiped her eyes fiercely. In a hoarse voice she said, "All right, I'll go back. I'll go see her, and tell her that we're all fine. Tell her not to worry. Leave in peace. In our next life, she'll still be our daughter. We'll dote on her." Bianhan also said in a muffled voice, "I'll treat your leg when you come back. Then remember to eat well. That wheelchair is too heavy. Don't force yourself. Don't fall and hurt yourself again. You have to treat your legs as soon as possible and go back to Yongfu village to see Mulan. Take care of yourself too. Don't take care of Yuanji." Okay. Even though they had only been apart for a few days, the two of them still talked for a long time. The next day, Yuanji realized that when his mother was packing for him, she had also packed her own things. They would only be back for a few days. There was no need to bring too many things. Dafeng, on the other hand, brought a few wooden carvings with her, intending to burn them for Bian Mulan. The carriage was already waiting at the entrance of the courtyard early in the morning. This time, Qiuyue would personally bring Yunshu and Yuanji back. He also had to return to the county city. Firstly, he wanted to ask Qin Wenjung about the Tao family's situation, and secondly, he wanted to go back and collect herbs. After Qiuyue opened the pharmacy, he contacted a few herb farmers to buy some of the herbs in their hands. Everyone was happy to sell them to him for a fair price. The Gu family was very relieved to leave Yunshu and Yuanji to him. However, she did not expect Dafeng to say that she wanted to go back. After hearing her reason, Yundong nodded slightly. "All right. Yuanji knows my cousin's location, but the mountain path is difficult to walk on. I'll get brother Xiao to send you there." Qiuyue nodded. "Don't worry. Leave eldest aunt to me." Bianhan also wanted to go back, but his legs were not suitable for long journeys. If the carriage was too bumpy, his legs, which he had painstakingly recovered, would probably become even worse. Dr. Xiong suggested that he stay at home for the next few days and massage his thighs more. At this moment, he was sitting in a wheelchair as Gu Dajiang pushed him to the door. He watched as his wife and children got into the carriage and slowly left for the alley. After a while, when the carriage had completely disappeared, Gu Yundong said, "Let's go back to the house. It's cold outside. Don't catch a cold." Bian Han reluctantly retracted his gaze, and the group entered the house. No one saw that Gu Yundong, whose back was facing them, had a scorching light in her eyes. With Yunshu and the others gone, it was time to settle some scores. For example, concubine Gu of the Zhou mansion. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 875, Settling the Scores. After sending Xiao Qingyuan's carriage off, Gu Yundong asked Tong Shuetao to set up a carriage after lunch and told Gu Dajiang that he wanted to take a look at the shop. But when the carriage turned out of the alley, Gu Yundong suddenly instructed Tong Shuetao, "Go to the Zhou residence." "All right." Tong Shuetao paused for a moment, then immediately understood what young Miss wanted to do. After all, she had been with young Miss for so long. Tong Shuetao had been waiting for a few days, hoping that Miss would teach Qiuyue a lesson. This person was really heartless. She had done all kinds of bad things, and did not show any mercy to her own family. She deserved retribution. However, Miss didn't make a move. Tong Shuetao thought that Miss had given up. So she was planning to wait for young master and the others to leave before taking action. She sped up the carriage. "Miss, are we going to the Zhou mansion to tell old Master Zhou directly?" "No." "Why?" "Mr. Zhou is afraid of you. If he knows that concubine Gu is your enemy, he will definitely want to teach her a lesson, just like the young master of the Feng family in the county. He will do you a favor." Gu Yundong leaned against the carriage window and could not help but laugh. Give her face? How was Peng Zhongfei giving her face? He was giving face to the non-existent god that she had mentioned. Besides, Peng Zhongfei had been set up by Gu Xiener and hated her. Madame Yao and concubine Xia had secretly tried to sow discord, so Gu Xiener had no chance to make a comeback. However, Zhou Dafu was different. He liked Gu Qiuyue. Gu Yundong did not know what was wrong with his taste. Anyway, from the fact that he had yet to give up on her, it could be seen that Zhou Dafu liked Gu Qiuyue. Speaking of which, why did the descendants of old Gu and Madame Zhao like to be concubines so much? Could this be genetic inheritance? From the looks of it, Uncle's genes had mutated. Zhou Dafu is afraid of me, but he also hates me. If he finds out about my relationship with Gu Qiuyue, he might make a big fuss out of it. We might even help Gu Qiuyue and let the two of them deal with me together. When Tong Shuetao heard this, it seemed to make sense. Then what should we do? Capture Gu Qiuyue and cripple her? Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Peach, we're civilized people. Don't fight and kill for no reason. You're only in front of me. If you say this outside, others might think that I'm cruel. Could it be that this was not the truth? The carriage will stop at the tea house diagonally opposite the Zhou residence. Go and find out if Zhou Dafu is at home. I'll wait for you at the tea house. As soon as she finished speaking, Tong Shuetao, who was outside, suddenly pulled the reins. Phew, Gu Yundong looked out of the window. It was not there. Miss, Tong Shuetao said. I don't need to ask around. Zhou Dafu is there. Gu Yundong changed the window and looked out. Indeed, she saw Zhou Dafu and Steward Zhou standing not far away outside the back door of a family mansion, arguing with the gatekeeper. Gu Yundong looked up. Oh, isn't this the Dai residence? She frowned slightly and said to Tong Shuetao, drive the carriage forward and see what they're talking about. Don't be discovered. Yes, my lady. Tong Shuetao pretended to walk forward as if nothing had happened. When she reached the corner, she stopped. Gu Yundong got down from the carriage and squinted at Zhou Dafu, who was not far away. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 876. Dafu Zhou tricked Dai Wenhuo? Zhou Dafu was pacing back and forth outside with a frown, looking very frustrated. Steward Zhou kept a smile on his face as he said to the gatekeeper, "Little brother, help me. Our master really knows your young master. If you inform him, your young master will definitely remember." As he spoke, he stuffed a silver ingot into his hand. The gatekeeper hurriedly retracted his hand and said impatiently, "Go, go, go. Are you bluffing me? If you really know him, you can just ask your master to write an invitation for our young master and enter through the main door. Do you have to make things difficult for me here? All right, leave quickly. Don't waste my time here. Let's go." As the gatekeeper spoke, he pushed Steward Zhou out. "Hey, why are you still doing it? Let me tell you, I'm really not lying to you. Why don't you go and look for Bian Han? He's the servant your young master bought a few days ago. He knows our old master." Steward Zhou could only take a step back and mention Bian Han's name, although he felt that it was not very useful. Steward Zhou was also worried. Of course, his master had sent a post, but every time he received a response, it was that young Master Dai was very busy. Young Master Dai was not around, and young Master Dai did not know him. The gatekeeper in front of them already knew them, so they could only come here to try their luck. In any case, Zhou Dafu felt that the servants had not told young Master Dai about him at all. Otherwise, why would young Master Dai not see him? It did not make sense. However, the truth was that he could not enter the Dai residence at all, let alone see young Master Dai. When Gu Yundong saw this, he lowered his eyes and fell into deep thought. It seemed that because Dai Wenhuo had bought her aunt and uncle, Zhou Dafu had indeed climbed up the ladder and started to build a relationship with him. In the end, she was the one who caused this trouble for Dai Wenhuo. Should she cut off Zhou Dafu's hope? However, just as she thought about this, someone suddenly walked out of the door in a hurry. At first, this person didn't notice Zhou Dafu and his wife outside, so he didn't manage to avoid them in time, and was seen by Zhou Dafu. Zhou Dafu's eyes immediately lit up, and he suddenly rushed forward. His speed was as fast as a rabbit, and it was completely disproportionate to his fat body. Guard Dai. Dai Zhong subconsciously dodged to avoid being hit by Zhou Dafu. When he took a closer look, his expression immediately twisted. How unlucky. How did she bump into him? Zhou Dafu heaved a sigh of relief and took 2 steps forward to block Dai Zhong. Guard Dai, I've finally seen you. Hurry up and tell that gatekeeper if young Master Dai knows me. I've given young Master Dai 2 servants last time. Hey, old Master Zhou, please be careful with your words. Dai Zhong stretched out his hand and hurriedly interrupted him. He said with a serious expression, "What do you mean by giving our young master 2 servants? Those 2 people were bought by our young master. Old Master Zhou hasn't forgotten that the contract was written in black and white, right? Our young master still has that contract. Moreover, old Master Zhou's price wasn't low. These 2 servants cost a total of 50 taels of silver. This much money is enough for our young master to buy 5 servants. Moreover, one of them has crippled legs, and the other is sallow, thin, and covered in injuries. No matter what, our young master has suffered. In that case, it's old Master Zhou who tricked our young master." Trick? Tricked young Master Dai? How did it become a trick? Dai Zhong nodded and said very seriously, "Isn't that so? Our young master has never suffered such a huge loss. Old Master Zhou, you have good methods. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 877. She's still stupid as a pig. Gu Yundong did not know that Dai Zhong was such a good talker. He immediately covered his mouth and laughed. Tong Shuetao whispered in her ear, "Miss, old Master Zhou is about to die of anger." Serves him right. He still wants to use what happened that day to get involved with the Dai family. If it's really that easy, he can forget about being the prefecture magistrate. On the other side, Zhou Dafu and Steward Zhou were stunned. How could this happen? Although he had received 50 taels of silver, he only thought that Dai Wenhuo was generous. Moreover, he had made Bian Han sound so powerful as if he was thirsty for talent, who had not spent a lot of money for something they loved. 50 taels of silver was nothing. How could he know that Dai Wenhuo had given him the 50 taels, and was still waiting for him to reduce the money. As for the contract, he clearly said that he signed it so that no one would criticize him. Why had it become evidence that they were done with each other? Daizhong snorted coldly. It's just a normal transaction. I hope old Master Zhou doesn't think too much. With that, he turned around and left. The gatekeeper had also heard the gist of it. Since guardian Daizhong had said so, he was certain that the two of them had nothing to do with the young master. Therefore, he turned around and closed the door with a bang. Zhou Dafu looked at the closed door in a daze and finally gave up on his fantasies. Wenhuo really didn't like him. His face instantly turned ferocious. He raised his leg and kicked the wall beside him. Steward Zhou turned pale with fright and hurriedly pulled Zhou Dafu back a few steps. Master, you must calm down. If this wall is broken, the prefecture magistrate will probably blame us later. We don't have a backer in the Xuanhe prefecture. Zhou Dafu's face was ashen as he panted heavily. Wenhuo, how dare he scheme against me? Steward Zhou almost covered his mouth again. When he heard that, he immediately pulled Zhou Dafu to the side. Master, actually, I think that perhaps this can't be completely blamed on young Master Dai. I think that it might be that the Bien couple who spoke ill of our residence in front of young Master Dai. The two of them suffered in the Zhou residence, so they have to take revenge. The best way is to make young Master Dai have a problem with you. Zhou Dafu frowned and felt that it made sense. Then he remembered that it was concubine Gu who caused Bien Han to hate the Zhou mansion. He gnashed his teeth. Gu Qiuyue is such a bitch. If she had treated her sister and brother-in-law better, we could have made use of this relationship to bond with Master Dai. But she is as stupid as a pig. Steward Zhou was speechless. He suddenly slapped his mouth. Who told you to speak so quickly and mention something you shouldn't have? He quickly changed the topic and said, Master, what should we do now? What else can we do? Go back. Zhou Dafu turned around and walked back angrily. Gu Yundong came out from the corner. Let's go and follow them. Yes, my lady. The carriage was too big of a target, so Tong Shuetao knocked on the back door of the Dai residence and asked the gatekeeper to help look after the carriage. The gatekeeper knew Gu Yundong and immediately agreed. Gu Yundong and Zhou Dafu followed. Initially, they thought that Zhou Dafu would return to the residence directly. They did not know what Steward Zhou had said, but when they reached the entrance of the tea house that Gu Yundong had gone to, the two of them suddenly turned around and entered. Gu Yundong looked up. After hesitating for a moment, she lowered her head slightly and went upstairs. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 878. Strange Steward Zhou. Zhou Dafu's seat was in the corner. Gu Yundong chose a seat where she could see them, but it was not easy for them to see her. Fortunately, there were many people coming and going in the tea house at this time, so no one paid much attention to them. Naturally, Zhou Dafu and his servant were the same. Gu Yundong ordered a pot of tea, a stack of peanuts, a plate of cucumbers, and slowly ate with Tong Shuetao. There were even storytellers in the tea house. With a clap of the wooden stick, their voices were raised and immediately received cheers from the entire hall. Gu Yundong had never heard of it before, and was a little curious. On the other hand, Tong Shuetao was not very interested in this storytelling. This person spoke genteelly, and liked to keep people in suspense. In the end, there were only a few familiar stories. They were not as good as the little stories that Miss had told young Master and the others. Hence, Tong Shuetao had been paying attention to Zhou Dafu and his servant the entire time. After Gu Yundong listened for a while, Tong Shuetao suddenly said in surprise, Miss, why is old Master Zhou drinking? This is a tea house. He treats it as a tavern. If he wants to drink, why doesn't he go to a tavern? Drink. Gu Yundong finally shifted his gaze to Zhou Dafu. As expected, Zhou Dafu was drinking. It was unknown if he was drowning his sorrows with alcohol. Steward Zhou, who was beside him, not only did he not stop him, he even persuaded him. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes. This was a little strange. There was also wine in the tea house, but it was suitable for drinking a few cups. After he gulped it down, it quickly attracted the waiter. He probably knew Zhou Dafu and went forward to persuade him. Zhou Dafu was frustrated and took 2 more big gulps. Steward Zhou pulled the waiter to the side and said softly, "Our master is in a bad mood now. He'll just drink 2 more glasses. Don't worry. With me here to take care of him, even if he's drunk, he won't go crazy." The waiter frowned and wanted to say something, but Zhou Dafu suddenly tilted his head and fell unconscious. Yundong was speechless. Tong Shuitao chuckled. With his alcohol tolerance, he still has the cheek to drink. The waiter sighed and looked at Steward Zhou. "Your master is drunk. It's better to send him back first." At least it was as he had said, and they did not make a fuss. Steward Zhou immediately nodded. "Don't worry, you'll help him back now." As he spoke, he grabbed his arm and placed it on her shoulder. He slowly stood up, and failed. After trying twice, Steward Zhou knelt back down. He laughed dryly at the waiter who hurriedly said, "We'll help your master back with you." Steward Zhou refused without hesitation. "No need, no need. You see, there are many guests now and you're very busy. There are still guests calling you over. How about this? I'll go back and get someone to come over immediately. The Zhou mansion isn't far away. I'll be back soon." Before the waiter could say anything, he had already gone downstairs. Tong Shuitao was dumbfounded. She said softly, "Miss, what exactly is Steward Zhou doing? Why do I feel that something is wrong? He just left old Master Zhou there and ran off. Doesn't he care? Isn't he afraid that something will happen?" Yundong also found it very strange. She got up and walked to the window looking down. Steward Zhou had just run out of the tea house and even turned to look upstairs. Yundong hurriedly retracted her head and waited for Steward Zhou to run away before looking over again. But strangely, Steward Zhou was indeed running in the direction of the Zhou mansion. Chapter 879. Qiuyue is here. Yundong returned to her seat. Tong Shuitao hurriedly came over and asked, "Miss, how is it? What does Steward Zhou want to do?" "I don't know. Let's watch here first. He'll come back eventually." "Okay." Tong Shuitao looked at Zhou Dafu as she ate. Although Zhou Dafu's character was not good, he had a good behavior. Once he was drunk, he would lie on the table and sleep. It was fine if he did not cause trouble, but he did not even snore. Moreover, his hands and feet were well behaved and did not move at all. After nearly 15 minutes, Steward Zhou still had not returned. The waiter was a little worried. Seeing that there were not many customers, he almost ran to the Zhou mansion personally. Even Yundong thought that she had guessed wrongly, and that Steward Zhou might not return. At this moment, Steward Zhou appeared. Not only him, but there were also 2 people following behind him. Yundong took a closer look. "Oh, isn't this Mrs. Run?" Behind her is Qiuyue, who is disguised as a man. Tong Shuitao also recognized her and immediately widened her eyes. "And miss, it's Qiuyue." "I know. Quickly turn your head around." Qiuyue seemed to have a guilty conscience. At this moment, she kept looking back at her surroundings, as if she was afraid that others would recognize her. However, she did not even think about it. Was it appropriate to dress up as a man without even tightening her chest? Especially since her hair was not combed neatly in a hurry. She did not look like a servant at all. The waiter stood at the side and was at a loss for words. He thought that Steward Zhou had gone back to call for guards. What was the use of calling a weak woman back? Steward Zhou pretended not to see his gaze. Time was really tight, and most of the people in the snow-blowing garden were Mrs. Zhou's men. It was not easy to bring them out, so he could only disguise himself slightly. Although Qiuyue was a woman, she was stronger than most ladies and madams. At least, she was better than Mrs. Run, who was old and frail. Therefore, even though Zhou Dafu was slightly plump, she and Steward Zhou supported him from both sides. There was also Mrs. Run behind him, so there was no big problem. It was just a little strenuous. The waiter was also trembling in fear, afraid that the 2 of them would drop old Master Zhou, especially when they went downstairs. He had been leading the way. It was not until the 2 of them walked out of the tea house that the waiter heaved a sigh of relief. Yundong, who was on the 2nd floor, was deep in thought. She did not understand what was going on. What were Steward Zhou and Qiuyue up to? Since he wanted to send the drunk old Master Zhou back, Steward Zhou could have just found the concierge. Why did he have to do this? Miss, what do they want to do? Could it be that they want to harm old Master Zhou and kill him for money? Yundong glanced at her. How is that possible? What good will old Master Zhou's death do them? Once he dies, the person in charge of the residence will be Mrs. Zhou, and the person who will inherit the assets will be Mrs. Zhou's son. Qiuyue will be the first to be tortured to death. She paused. Let's go and take a look. Tong Shuitao hurriedly put down the tea money and followed Yundong out of the tea house. The two of them quickly saw Zhou Dafu and the others walking in front. They supported someone and naturally walked slowly. However, not long after, Mrs. Ren suddenly took a few quick steps forward. Just as she was about to reach the Zhou mansion, she suddenly turned to the left. Then Steward Zhou and Qiuyue helped Zhou Dafu turn and followed. Yundong. Chapter 880. Yundong is stunned. They were about to arrive at the Zhou mansion, but they actually passed through the door and did not enter? It couldn't be that they really wanted to kill him like Tong Shuitao had said, right? These three people weren't that stupid, right? Yundong and Tong Shuitao looked at each other but still followed. After turning a corner, they saw a building. Was this an inn? At this moment, Steward Zhou and the others were helping Zhou Dafu into the inn. Yundong's brows were tightly knitted as she followed them in. The inn was not very big, but there were still many guests. Half of the lobby on the first floor was occupied, but Zhou Dafu and the others went to the second floor. Now that no one was going up to the second floor, Yundong could not go up rashly. Otherwise it would be easy to be discovered. She could only find a seat and sit down. After a moment, she said to Tong Shuitao, "Follow behind that guest and see what they're doing on the second floor. Be careful not to expose yourself." Mrs. Ren and the others had seen Yundong before, and were very familiar with him. They did not have much impression of Tong Shuitao. The latter nodded and immediately stood up, following behind the two customers who had just booked a room at the counter. She had just gone up the stairs when she saw Mrs. Ren in the corner. Only Mrs. Ren stood at the door like a god. Her face was dark, and no one dared to approach her. Tong Shuitao took a look and stopped looking. She quietly went down again. When she told Yundong, the latter frowned. "Have you looked carefully? Is mother alone at the door?" "Yes, the room they booked is in the corner. There's no one else beside Mrs. Ren." Yundong stroked her chin. "Mrs. Ren is at the door. There's only old Master Zhou, Steward Zhou, and Qiuyue in the room. What are the three of them doing inside?" "Oh, old Master Zhou is still drunk." Tong Shuitao also looked very troubled and was thinking. Yundong suddenly reacted after hearing her words. She gently clapped her hands. "Yes, you're right. Old Master Zhou is drunk. So strictly speaking, there's only Steward Zhou and Qiuyue in the room. What are the two of them doing alone in the room?" Yundong's eyes widened as she spoke. "No, it can't be, right? It can't be what I think, right? Miss, what did you think of?" As soon as Tong Shuitao saw her expression, she knew that Miss must have thought it through. As expected, Miss was smart. She couldn't understand what they were trying to do. Yundong clasped her hands and lowered her voice. "Peach, do you still remember what I told you last time? Zhou Dafu only has one child. You said that he has a beautiful wife and many concubines, but he only has one son after so many years. It's very likely that Zhou Dafu has health problems." This time, Tong Shuitao understood. "Miss, you mean that Zhou Dafu is infertile?" "It can't be said that he is infertile. It can only be said that it's difficult for him to have children. It was said that Mrs. Zhou only got pregnant 3 years after she married Zhou Dafu. I wasn't sure before, but am 80% sure now. It's not easy for Zhou Dafu to have children. I think all the elders in the residence can guess this, especially Mrs. Ren, who has served old Mrs. Zhou for many years." However, Mrs. Ren still gave Qiuyue the idea to get her pregnant with Zhou Dafu's child. This meant that she had already thought of a way out. And this way out was Steward Zhou. Damn it, she was cheating on Zhou Dafu. Chapter 881, Nasty. If that was really the case, then Yundong was very convinced by this operation. Tong Shuitao was exceptionally excited when she heard this. This means that Qiuyue wants to. She looked around and lowered her voice. "She wants to borrow semen?" Tong Shuitao shivered with goosebumps. It was too disgusting. Moreover, she was borrowing it from an old man like Steward Zhou. The problem was that they actually did it in front of the drunk old master Zhou. Tong Shuitao was disgusted. No wonder Steward Zhou wanted to get old master Zhou drunk. No wonder he rushed back and brought Qiuyue over. No wonder he didn't go back even though he was so close to the Zhou mansion. Instead, he brought his master to an inn, and even got a superior room. Wait. That's not right, Mississippi. Then why did he bring old master Zhou into the room? When Qiuyue is pregnant, can't she just say that old master Zhou is the father? Yundong said. Zhou Dafu hated Qiuyue during this period of time. Why would he touch her? That's why he had to be drunk. When he wakes up the next day and sees himself sleeping with Qiuyue, he will definitely think that something happened between the two of them. When she gets pregnant a month later, will Zhou Dafu suspect that the child is not his? He will probably be overjoyed, right? I'm afraid Qiuyue has already calculated the date. There were still many people who did not understand the danger and safety period, especially among the commoners. Pregnancy was completely up to fate. However, many wealthy families had already figured out the pattern, especially those who were old. Mrs. Ren was probably one of them, which was why she chose such a date. The probability of Qiuyue getting pregnant today was very high. Tong Shuitao was extremely excited when she heard this. She immediately wanted to stand up. Then, miss, what are we waiting for? Let's catch them in the act. Now that we've caught them in the act, old Master Zhou will definitely not let them off. Coincidentally, these three people have a grudge against us. Now we can clean up the mess. What's the hurry? Yundong glanced at her. You said it yourself. There are three of them, and Zhou Dafu is drunk and unconscious. The outcome might not be beneficial to us. There's no need for us to get into trouble. If Qiuyue bites back later, we won't be able to get it off. Who knew if Qiuyue would drag her down with her? It would be best if she had a companion along the way. Then what should we do? Are we just going to ignore it? Tong Shuitao was a little anxious. Then, as if she had thought of something, she asked in surprise. Could it be that Miss is planning to wait for Qiuyue's child to be born, and find an opportunity to give them a blood test to let old Master Zhou know that the child is not his? Then, old Master Zhou will feel that he was overjoyed for nothing. His love for that child is all to remind him of how big a mistake he has made. Then he will be even angrier and beat Qiuyue to death. Kid, you're quite imaginative. But Yundong could not wait that long. Besides, if an innocent child was involved in this, she would be committing a sin. Yundong waved at Tong Shuitao. When she got closer, she whispered into her ear. Tong Shuitao nodded repeatedly. All right. Oh, go now. She was so excited that her body was trembling. After Yundong finished speaking, she got up and walked out of the inn. Tong Shuitao's skills were not bad now, and she was fast. Not long after, she stopped outside the Zhou mansion. Chapter 882. Something must have happened. Tong Shuitao knew that there were two gatekeepers at the main door of the Zhou mansion. Miss said that she saw Steward Zhou enter from the main door, but she didn't see him come out from the main door. They should have walked to the back door. Steward Zhou brought Mrs. Ren and Qiuyue along, and anyone could tell at a glance that something was wrong with Qiuyue. But the guards at the back door still let them out. In that case, the guard at the back door must be Steward Zhou or Mrs. Ren's men. So she couldn't go to the back door. Tong Shuitao walked straight towards the main door. When she was about to leave, she looked around and saw an 8 or 9-year-old child not far away. She immediately took out a fruit candy and waved at him. The child's eyes lit up and he ran over. Do you need something from me? Go to the gatekeeper of the family in front and say a few words. This candy is yours. The child looked at the candy and swallowed. He quickly nodded. Tong Shuitao whispered in his ear and handed him the candy. The child hurriedly stuffed the candy into his mouth and ran towards the entrance of the Zhou mansion. He knocked on the door a few times. When he saw the gatekeeper walk out impatiently, he said, "The waiter at the Five Blessings tea house asked me to come and tell you that your master was drunk in their tea house." Steward Zhou said that he wanted to go back to the residence to look for helpers, but he hasn't returned. If you have time, quickly bring your master back lest something happens. With that, The child licked the candy and ran away. The gatekeeper was still in a daze. When he came back to his senses, the child had disappeared. He frowned. The Five Blessings Tea House. Steward Zhou had returned earlier and was in a hurry. He did not even reply when the gatekeeper asked. The gatekeeper frowned and said to the other guard, "Guard the door. I'll come back after taking a look." In any case, the tea house was not far away. If it was really Old Master, what if something happened? If he brought Old Master back, Old Master might even think highly of him. As he thought about it, the gatekeeper had already run off in a hurry. However, he didn't see Zhou Dafu at all in the tea house. The gatekeeper cursed in his heart. He must have been tricked by that child. Don't let him see him again, or he would definitely take off his pants and beat him up. However, before he left, he still asked the waiter. When the waiter heard that he was from the Zhou residence, and that Old Master Zhou had not returned, he was shocked. How is that possible? Steward Zhou has already taken Old Master Zhou away. Old Master Zhou was indeed drunk and unconscious. It's been a long time. Could it be that he hasn't returned to the residence? The gatekeeper was stunned. There really was such a thing? However, he was the gatekeeper and did not see Steward Zhou return. They couldn't go through the back door, right? The back door was far away, so there was no reason not to use the main door. The gatekeeper had a bad feeling and asked a few more questions. The waiter said, "Steward Zhou couldn't help him up alone. I originally wanted to help him send Old Master Zhou back to the residence, but Steward Zhou said that there was no need. He went back to call for help, but in the end he called two women and one of them was dressed as a manservant. It was also strange." The gatekeeper's eyes widened. What was Steward Zhou going to do? Oh no, something must have happened. The old master was drunk and was not brought back to the residence. He even brought two unfamiliar women with him. There was something fishy about this. The gatekeeper could not care less anymore and ran back to the Zhou mansion in a hurry. Chapter 883 Shock. As soon as he entered the door, the gatekeeper went to look for the butler in a hurry. The butler also felt that something was wrong. Could it be that Steward Zhou wanted to harm Old Master? He was also afraid and quickly went to report to Mrs. Zhou. Hearing the words, Mrs. Zhou sprang up from her chair. She was thinking more than the housekeeper. Butler Zhou was on good terms with Mrs. Run and worked for concubine Gu, but now, Mrs. Su also thought of it and whispered into Mrs. Zhou's ear, "Madam, the waiter at the tea house said that he brought two women there. Could these two be Gu Qiuyue and Mrs. Ren? It must be them." Mrs. Zhou gritted her teeth. The gatekeeper didn't see Steward Zhou go out from the front door, so he must have gone out from the back door. Good, very good. I didn't expect these two to still have the strength to jump around. Nanny Sue, get someone to tie up the old woman who was guarding the back door today, and go to Snow-Blowing Garden to see if Gu Qiuyue brought Old Master to her place. Mrs. Su hurriedly did as she was told. Not long after, she came back panting with a look of panic on her face. "Madam, Gu Qiuyue didn't come back, and Master didn't come back either. The old woman guarding the back door said that she would only let them out, but they didn't come back." They didn't come back? Mrs. Zhou was flabbergasted. She thought that Steward Zhou had taken advantage of the fact that Old Master was drunk to deliberately bring her back from the back door and send her to Gu Qiyue's bed. Mrs. Zhou realized that the matter had become serious. After walking around the house twice, she said in a low voice, "They haven't returned to the residence. Master is still drunk. Where are they taking Master and what are they doing? Let me think. I have to think about where they will go. There are the same number of carriages in the stable, so they shouldn't be too far away. Gu Qiuyue doesn't have anywhere else to go in the prefectural city. She doesn't even have a place to stay. Where else can she go?" Nanny Su was also puzzled. Mrs. Zhou could not figure it out either. After a moment, she could only order, "Go out and search. It's only been a while. They can't be far. Look around here. Go personally. Hurry." "Yes, ma'am." Nanny Su brought a group of servants out of the main courtyard. The butler was also at the door. He ordered a few people to go to the left. He nodded at Nanny Su and brought a few people to the right. As for Nanny Su, she strode forward. Unexpectedly, after taking a few steps, someone suddenly ran towards her in a hurry and bumped into her. "Io, be careful." Nanny Su cried out in pain. Just as she was about to scold someone, she felt something stuffed into her palm. She was stunned. Tong Shuetao, who had bumped into her, had already lowered her head and apologized repeatedly in a low voice. I'm sorry. I had an urgent matter and offended you. Then, she ran away quickly. From the beginning to the end, Nanny Su did not have time to see her face clearly. She only knew that the other party was a woman and seemed to be quite old. Even after the stranger had run far away, she still stood rooted to the ground. Someone called out to her softly. Nanny Su suddenly came back to her senses, but she did not continue walking. She pinched the soft note in her palm and walked to the side before slowly unfolding it. With just one look, Nanny Su widened her eyes in shock and gasped in disbelief. Nanny Su, what's wrong? Why do you look so pale all of a sudden? An old woman beside her asked. However, Mrs. Su suddenly closed the note. After taking a deep breath, as if she did not believe it, she unfolded the note and read it again. Chapter 884. Catching Adultery. The next moment, Nanny Su made a prompt decision and said to the old woman beside her, call those two groups back. There's no need to search. Why is that? Nanny Su did not explain further. She only hurriedly said, oh, go back to the residence first. Then, she returned to the Zhou mansion, and did not dare to stop for a moment to look for Mrs. Zhou in the main courtyard. She handed the note to Mrs. Zhou. The latter took a look and was equally shocked. Is what this says true? Well, no, once we take a look. Mrs. Zhou suddenly stood up. There was anger on her face, but there was also a faint joy. She took a deep breath and asked Nanny Su, the butler is back? He's back. All right, let's go. Bring him along. The butler was deeply trusted by Zhou Dafu. With him as a witness, it did not matter even if old master was drunk and unconscious. Actually, the more convenient and suitable candidate was Feng. Unfortunately, Feng and Hai were not around today. That's right. Because they weren't around, Steward Zhou acted today. Nanny Su put a cloak on Mrs. Zhou and the group strode out. When they walked out of the door, they happened to meet the butler who had returned. Mrs. Zhou said, someone saw Mrs. Run going to Auspicious Inn in a hurry. I don't know what she's up to. Come with me to take a look. Yes, ma'am. The group hurried to the Auspicious Inn. Not far away, Tong Shuetao, who had been observing them, ran away first. She took off her coat and ran straight to the inn. She sat in front of Yundong and said excitedly, Miss, your guess is right. As expected, the person at the main gate went to report to Mrs. Zhou. Then Nanny Su personally came out to look for her. According to what you said, I stuffed the note into her hand. At this moment, Mrs. Zhou is bringing people over. Yundong nodded. If she wanted to tell Mrs. Zhou about this, she had to go through her trusted aide, Nanny Su. Unfortunately, it was not easy for Yundong to enter the Zhou mansion, so she took a detour to let them discover that old Master Zhou and the others had disappeared. Miss, what should we do now? Tong Shuetao asked softly. What if Mrs. Run is guarding the door, and Mrs. Zhou and the others come over? What if Mrs. Run informs them? It's fine. Mrs. Zhou is not stupid. Even if she was really stupid, there was still Yundong. Tong Shuetao was relieved. She held the teacup and took a sip of water. Then Mrs. Zhou came in with Nanny Su and the butler. Other than them, there were also a few people who came in. The waiter of the inn saw that they were coming aggressively, and was about to ask when Nanny Su stuffed silver into his hands. Then, she said that the servants in the residence had stolen the property of the residence and hid here. They were here to arrest them. The waiter looked at the silver, and did not ask further. Mrs. Su said to an unfamiliar old woman, Go up and take a look. Is Mrs. Run here? The old woman nodded and came down after a while. She nodded at Mrs. Zhou. She's indeed here. Mrs. Zhou said to the housekeeper, I am right. Concubine Gu and Mrs. Run have done something shameful. Master might have been harmed by them. The butler asked, Then what does Madam plan to do? Mrs. Zhou had a cold smile on her face. She raised her hand and pointed at the two of them, whispering a few words. Yundong and Tong Shuetao were sitting a little further away. Even though Tong Shuetao had stretched her ears, she still could not hear clearly. Chapter 885. Qiuyue is dead. However, they still saw the two people who were called out by Mrs. Zhou clearly. The two of them were dressed ordinary and not too conspicuous. They looked like guests who had come to stay. After hearing the instructions, the two of them lowered their heads and went to the second floor. Not long after, Mrs. Zhou and the others went up. Curious, Tong Shuitao silently fell behind her. She only stuck her head out and saw Mrs. Ren's eyes wide open in horror. She was pressed down and gagged by the two people who had gone upstairs first. There was no way to inform others at all. Those two people might have some skills. When they attacked, they were clean and efficient, not giving Mrs. Ren a chance. Then, Mrs. Ren's face was filled with disbelief as she watched Mrs. Zhou push open the door with Nanny Sue and the butler. Tong Shuitao still wanted to go in and take a closer look, but Mrs. Zhou probably knew that family scandals could not be publicized. She got someone to surround this area, not giving anyone a chance to watch the commotion. As soon as she entered, the door closed. Tong Shuitao sighed regretfully. She went downstairs listlessly and sat opposite Yundong. Miss, aren't you curious? What's there to be curious about? I've already guessed. Besides, there's nothing to see here. They weren't a handsome man and a beautiful woman, and she didn't have a good figure. It hurt her eyes to look at her. Yundong waited for a while before Mrs. Zhou came downstairs. Not only her, but also Zhou Dafu. Zhou Dafu was forcefully woken up by Mrs. Zhou. His hair was still wet from the tea. In the end, he did not drink much. After a while, he woke up. But at this moment, Zhou Dafu's face was ashen. Behind them were Steward Zhou and Mrs. Ren, who were being escorted. Steward Zhou still had footprints on his body, and Mrs. Ren had a palm print on her face. Both of them looked desperate. On the other hand, Qiuyue tilted her head and seemed to be unconscious. Just like that, she was dragged out by the two old women. The group of people hurriedly left the auspicious inn without even looking at the lobby downstairs. As soon as they left, discussions broke out in the inn. Isn't this the old master of the Zhou mansion? What happened? I heard that a maidservant stole their things and ran away. Mrs. Zhou came to arrest her. Wow, that must be a treasure. Otherwise, why would old Master Zhou and Madame Zhou come personally? And was old Master Zhou here? What do you think was stolen? It was unknown what had been stolen, but that night, the Zhou mansion was robbed. It was said that the thief went to the Zhou mansion to search first. The next day, the news of old Master Zhou being cheated on by his concubine spread on the street. It was the thief who found out. When he went to the Zhou mansion, he happened to see Zhou Dafu dealing with concubine Gu. It was said that Steward Zhou and Mrs. Ren were both beaten 50 times each. However, halfway through the beating, the two of them couldn't hold on and died. Zhou Dafu wanted concubine Gu to pay with her life. These days, adultery was a serious crime, especially when concubine Gu was a concubine. Concubine Gu refused, and somehow, she bumped into a pillar, and then she was gone. When the news reached Yundong, she was about to leave. Gu Dajiang had already finished his vacation and went to Tianhai Academy to study. Hence, both father and daughter knew that Qiuyue was dead. Chapter 886 Smallpox. Yundong was expressionless, and her heart was calm. To be honest, she was the one who caused this, but at the end of the day, Qiuyue was the one who courted death. Instead, she turned to look at Gu Dajiang. Gu Dajiang was really stunned for a moment. He was a little surprised and his emotions were indescribably complicated. Dead? Gu Dajiang didn't know what to feel. There was surprise, bitterness, and relief. As if sensing his daughter's gaze, he turned around and glanced at her. Why are you looking at me? She deserved it for doing such a thing. All right, go do your thing. I'm going to the academy. With that, Gu Dajiang got into the carriage. Shui Rong shook the reins and the carriage gradually drove away. Gu Yundong secretly sighed. It was no longer important whether Qiuyue had accidentally hit the pillar or died after hitting it. Anyway, this person would be gone from now on and would never appear in front of her again. She shook her head and prepared to go to the shop. However, after taking a few steps, a person rushed over from not far away. Gu Yundong was surprised. Dr. Xiong, why are you here? Didn't you say that you were going to spar with Dr. Wang from that clinic today? So don't mention it. Dr. Wang went to treat a child from a family. However, the other party had smallpox and couldn't be saved. Dr. Wang was in a bad mood, so I couldn't disturb him. You're quite understanding? Yes, you finally realized. Dr. Xiong waved his hand and walked towards the small courtyard. So I took this opportunity to come and take a look at your uncle's leg. If there's no problem, I'll break it today. Yundong. Can you not be so scary? But since Dr. Xiong wanted to treat her uncle's leg, Yundong could not go out again. She followed Dr. Xiong back to the courtyard door, but after taking a few steps, she suddenly stopped. Wait, smallpox? Yundong's eyes lit up. Smallpox. That's right. Everyone knew how terrifying smallpox was these days. Almost everyone's expression changed when they heard it. However, this was an infectious disease. If they were not careful, everyone around them would suffer. Not to mention the common people. Even the members of the royal family could only wait for death if they contracted this disease. Over the years, the number of cases of smallpox had increased year by year, causing a large number of deaths every year. However, regardless of whether it was the imperial physicians or the civilian doctors, they had been helpless against this illness. Yundong knew that many people were fighting against this infectious disease. She also knew that the human pox vaccination method had existed for a long time. Unfortunately, this method was not foolproof. Patients with mild illnesses would have scars, and those with serious illnesses would still die. It was not until someone overseas discovered the cowpox vaccination method that humans finally conquered smallpox. However, Yundong did not know the details of either method, so she quickly walked forward and followed Dr. Xiong. She asked him, Dr. Xiong, you mentioned smallpox just now. Do you know the humanpox vaccination method? As long as she knew the humanpox vaccination method, it would be much easier to learn cowpox vaccination method. The humanpox vaccination method? Dr. Xiong stopped in his tracks and lowered his eyes to think. He said, I've heard of it, but this method has to be conducted very carefully. If the doctor accidentally fails, he might not be able to continue practicing medicine in the future. Therefore, not many people use it, and it's not very common. Chapter 887. She's really a smart person. Yundong's eyes lit up. It seemed that someone already knew the vaccination method for human acne. She asked again, Do you know how to do it, Dr. Xiong? Dr. Xiong shook his head. No. Then he frowned. Why are you asking this? However, when he thought of the children in her family, he immediately became anxious. Is it your younger brother and sister? Pft. Of course not. Yundong glanced at him angrily. They're fine. Didn't you mention smallpox just now? So I asked a few more questions. I see. Then how do you know the humanpox vaccination method? Many doctors did not know. Yundong raised her eyebrows. Someone told me. If Dr. Xiong couldn't do it, then Song Dejiang definitely could. As an imperial physician, and an imperial physician who had been rehired by the current emperor, he would be too useless if he did not even know the humanpox vaccination method. So Yundong hurried back to her room to write a letter to Song Dejiang. She had thought about it. If Brother Xiao wanted to make a contribution, wouldn't that be a huge contribution? She was really a smart girl. Yundong was elated until Dr. Xiong's shouting came from outside. What? You're not going to treat it today? Yundong put down her brush and paper and ran out. What's wrong? Dr. Xiong snorted. I'm treating your uncle's leg, but he's still unwilling. I've already said that it's fine, but he actually wants to choose an auspicious day. No. Bianhan had an awkward smile on his face as he explained. Dr. Xiong, I'm not picking a date. I just promised Yundong's aunt that I would treat my leg when she comes back. We've already agreed on this. If I go back on my word, her aunt will definitely be angry. That's why I said that you people are really clingy and wishy-washy. It's just treating an illness. Why do you need someone to accompany you? You're already so old. Your son is already so old. Shouldn't you be more straightforward? Dr. Xiong looked unhappy. I think you're just afraid of pain. When Bianhan heard the last sentence, he couldn't help but shrink his neck. Yundong saw it too, and was a little surprised. Uncle. So he was afraid of pain? She touched her chin slightly. There were painkillers in her space. However, Dr. Xiong admitted that he was not an unreasonable person. Bianhan said that he would wait until Gu Dafeng returned. Otherwise, there would be no one by his side. At that time, he would be in so much pain that he would cry and die. The doctor snorted arrogantly and left. Fortunately, Qiuyue brought Gu Dafeng back the next day. The few of them were travel-worn. Gu Dafeng looked a little haggard, but she was in good spirits. She probably went to see Bian Mulan, and vented her tears a couple of times. Her eyes were a little swollen. However, it could be seen that she was much more relaxed. As soon as Gu Dafeng entered, she went to look for Bianhan. I've already promised Mulan that when your leg recovers, we'll go back together to visit her, so you have to recover quickly. Don't worry, I'll take good care of myself. That's good. Let me tell you, Yongfu village is really a good place with beautiful mountains and clear water. The green brick-tiled house and eldest brother's house is the only one in the village. Oh no, there are only two. How about we build a house in Yongfu village? We can be neighbors with eldest brother's family. Gu Yundong saw that the two of them were talking enthusiastically. Gu Dafeng should have a lot to say. She quickly winked at Qiuyue when no one was paying attention. Chapter 888, she winked at him. Qiuyue saw that she had been winking at him, and his eyes lit up. Was she winking at him? He quickly followed her and the two of them walked into the central room to talk. Did everything go smoothly these few days? Gu Yundong asked. Qiuyue looked around and saw Madame Yang standing not far away. He felt a little regretful that he couldn't hold her hand. He cleared his throat and nodded. It went well. You went back and asked Qin Wenjing about the Tao family, right? What did he say? How involved is Tao Xing? Will he implicate you? This was what Gu Yundong was most concerned about now. The Tao family had sinned, but she could not just watch them make a fool of themselves. It was too worrying. Speaking of this, Qiuyue became more serious. From what Qin Wenjing said, this matter hasn't been completely investigated. The Tao family seems to be quite involved. Gu Yundong's heart skipped a beat. Quite involved? That serious? Her brows were tightly furrowed. In the end, Qiuyue couldn't help but reach out and smoothen her brows. It's fine. Although Qin Wenjing didn't say anything explicitly, he promised me that he would keep me safe. Hearing this, Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. Since Qin Wenjing said such things, he definitely knew what to do. However, they couldn't just rely on others. She felt uneasy that they didn't have a plan B. You don't have to worry too much. Qiuyue didn't want her to worry too much, so he changed the topic as if nothing had happened. Is everything all right at home these few days? I heard that Qiuyue is gone. After Qiuyue entered the city, he first transported the herbs to the shop. Zhou, who was in the shop now, quietly told him about this. Gu Yundong nodded. She's gone. She did not say anything else. The family is doing well. My father has also returned to school. Speaking of which, the flowers that my mother grafted have been raised. I don't know what the flowers will look like in the future. I'll only know when spring comes next year. By the way, Dr. Xiong came over yesterday. He originally wanted to treat Uncle's leg yesterday, but Uncle did not agree. He said that he had to wait for my eldest aunt to come back. At the mention of Dr. Xiong, Qiuyue couldn't help but shake his head and ask, has he gone to other clinics to look for a doctor these few days? Why not? He had an appointment with Dr. Wang yesterday. Unfortunately, Dr. Wang was treating a child, but that child had smallpox and was gone. Dr. Xiong did not disturb him. Gu Yundong sighed. Speaking of which, smallpox is really worrying. The day before yesterday, I went to a farm outside the city and saw that there was smallpox on the cow. I was shocked. Fortunately, an aunt said that it was not smallpox but cowpox. Because the milk tea shop needed a large amount of milk, Madame Dai and Yeshuang bought a few cows near the Xuanhe prefecture, and specially found a place to raise them. They even hired farmers who were already skilled to take care of these cows. Fortunately, the disease of cowpox is much lighter than smallpox. Although it can also infect people, they won't die after they get infected. By the way, I heard that those who have had cowpox don't have smallpox. Don't you think it's magical? Qiuyue was originally quietly listening to her talk about trivial matters, But when he heard this, he suddenly paused. You're saying that people who have cowpox won't have smallpox anymore? Yundong nodded. That's right. Those ants had it before. Even some of their own children had cowpox, but they were fine. Chapter 889. When will you get married? Xiao Qingyuan's pupils constricted slightly, and his expression became thoughtful. Yundong secretly looked at him and did not disturb him. After a while he heard him say, There's a way to prevent smallpox, but this method can't guarantee that nothing will go wrong. According to you, if the person with cowpox is fine, can't we change the smallpox to cowpox? Yundong pursed his lips. I knew it. He really thought of it at once. Yundong's eyes lit up and she said in surprise, That's right. Why didn't I think of that? If it succeeds, will we not have to be afraid of this illness in the future? Xiao Qingyuan's eyes were also shining. If that was the case, this was a huge matter that would benefit the country and the people. His hands trembled slightly, and he was a little tempted. For the first time, he had such a strong desire to do something. Xiao Qingyuan turned around and met Yundong's happy expression. He suddenly smiled and reached out to pinch her cheek. You're reminding me on purpose, right? Actually, you could have told me directly. There's no need to beat around the bush. He sounded so certain that it would be too much for Yundong to deny it. However, she still said righteously, How is that the same? If I had told you directly, how could it have been as fulfilling as what you found out yourself? Besides, I really don't know anything about medicine. I don't know the cowpox vaccination method and the humanpox vaccination method either. I just thought of this possibility. It can only be said that the two of us have telepathy and thought of it. As for the outcome, I'm not sure. Xiao Qingyuan's expression changed slightly. Is that so? Yundong nodded affirmatively. Yes, so how do we do it? Or do you want to do it yourself? I can't help much. This was true. She only knew about the cowpox vaccination method, but she did not know the details. She had also flipped through the spatial storage last night, but unfortunately, she could not find any books on this topic. What are you going to do next? The smile on Xiao Qingyuan's face deepened. I'll go to the cow farm another day. It's not just the cow farm near the Xuanhe prefecture. I also want to know the other places. If no one has died from the cowpox, I can give it a try. All right, if the cowpox vaccination method is indeed feasible, you will have made a great contribution. When the time comes, show this method to the emperor. Even if the Tao family commits a heinous crime, your contribution will not be erased. No one can touch you. Yundong felt that she had resolved the important matter in her heart. He felt relieved. Xiao Qingyuan looked at her with a burning gaze. He didn't say anything and reached out to hug her tightly. Thank you. No one had ever done this for him. Yundong's eyes curved into crescents. From the corner of her eye, she noticed Madame Yang staring at them with wide eyes. Afraid that her voice would attract others, Yundong quickly took a small step back and said, I didn't do that for you. I did it for the people of the world. She was actually embarrassed to the point of stuttering. Why was she so cute? Xiao Qingyuan was tempted. I know you're kind-hearted. When will you agree to marry me? Yundong was speechless. What did this have to do with marriage? No matter how kind-hearted she was, she could not agree to marriage so easily, right? She glared at him and suddenly laughed. As long as you can convince my father, we'll get married. Well, this was a little difficult. As Xiao Qingyuan was thinking, a raised voice suddenly came from outside. Chapter 890. Ingratiating to Eldest Aunt Gu. Brother, why are you like this? Where are your clothes? Aren't you afraid of freezing to death if you wear so little? How old are you? Do you know how to take care of yourself? This was Gu Dafeng's voice. From the sound of it, Gu Dajiang must have returned from school. As expected, his voice sounded. It's fine. It's not cold in the carriage. I ran for a while on the way back. I'm warm. Then you should put on your clothes. Hurry up. If you catch a cold later, you won't even need to go to the academy. Gu Dajiang had no choice but to put on his coat. In the house, Xiao Qingyuan's eyes flickered as he listened to the siblings' conversation. His future father-in-law seemed to listen to eldest aunt? That made sense. His father-in-law had been protected by eldest aunt since he was young. Although eldest aunt was only about 3 years older than his father-in-law, the eldest sister was like a mother. Madame Zhou did not treat him well. His father-in-law respected eldest Aunt Gu from the bottom of his heart. Moreover, only eldest Aunt Gu and uncle were older than Gu Dajiang now. In the following days, Gu Yundong realized that Qiuyue spent a lot of time with eldest Aunt Gu. He often gave her a hand without batting an eyelid, and was especially attentive to Bian Han's leg. At this moment, he had already walked up to Bian Han, and said that he would get Dr. Xiong to come over tomorrow to treat his uncle's leg. Gu Dafeng was naturally excited. After waiting for so long, the day had finally come. The next morning, Qiuyue indeed carried Dr. Xiong's medicine box, and led him to the small courtyard. It was still early, and the Gu family was still eating breakfast. Gu Dajiang had to go to the academy, so the others stayed behind to treat Bian Han's leg. Gu Yundong had previously asked Dr. Xiong if he had any painkillers. Unfortunately, Dr. Xiong said that this medicine had long been lost. Now someone had concocted it, but the effect was not great. Gu Yundong looked at his uncle, who had been sweating since Dr. Xiong entered the house. She knew that he was extremely afraid of pain. Hence, she took out the painkillers from her space, and mixed them in the water for Bian Han to drink half an hour in advance. There wasn't much. Hopefully it would work. After Dr. Xiong was ready, Gu Yundong asked Lu Hongxiu to stay in her room with Yunka and the others while she and Tong Shuitao waited outside eldest Aunt Gu's room. There was only eldest Aunt Gu, Dr. Xiong, and Qiuyue, who had been pulled in by Dr. Xiong to help. Bian Han grabbed Gu Dafeng's hand tightly, and did not even dare to look at his leg. Dr. Xiong squatted down to take a look before saying to Qiuyue, "You do it." Qiuyue, "It has to be you. I'm already so old, and my strength is limited. If I don't break it once and have to do it again, how much pain will he suffer? You have martial arts, are strong, and have studied medicine. No one is more suitable than you." When Gu Dafeng and Bian Han heard this, they hurriedly said to Qiuyue, "Qiuyue, come on, come on." When they heard that Dr. Xiong might not be able to break it in one go, the two of them quickly placed their hopes on Qiuyue. Qiuyue nodded. "All right, I'll do it." Bian Han quickly turned his head to the side. Dr. Xiong told Qiuyue what to pay attention to, then raised his head and said to Bian Han, "We're about to start. You don't have to be too crack." Before Dr. Xiong could finish speaking, Qiuyue had already made a clean move. Dr. Xiong was stunned. Gu Dafeng quickly turned to look at Bian Han. Chapter 891. She must be strong. Bian Han's face suddenly contorted. "Ah," he cried out in pain. However, she quickly blinked in surprise. It didn't seem to hurt that much. Could it be that he had been giving himself too much pressure recently? Was it just that he was thinking too much, and it actually didn't hurt that much? Gu Yundong, who was outside, was nervous when she heard the scream. She almost rushed in. Fortunately, the voices behind her were much lower, and she did not hear anything else. She was relieved. Time passed bit by bit. Aunt Nyo brought hot tea over, and Gu Yundong sat outside in the central room and drank 2 cups. Occasionally, she could hear Dr. Xiong's voice, Bian Han's cries of pain, and Gu Dafeng's comforting voice, but she did not hear Qiuyue's voice. It was not until noon that the door in front of her was opened again. Gu Yundong immediately stood up and looked at Qiuyue, who was the first to walk out. She asked, "How did it go?" He's fine, he's fine." Dr. Xiong waved his hand. "Just take good care of him next. Don't move around. Eat something good. Make some bone soup for him to drink. Oh right, don't carve wooden statues for the time being. I'll come over in the next 2 days to change his splints and medicine." "Thank you, Dr. Xiong." Tong Shuitao brought hot water to clean his hands. After wiping his hands and drinking a cup of hot tea, Dr. Xiong left. Only then did Gu Yundong go in to take a look at Bian Han. At this moment, he was lying on the bed with his legs splinted. His body was stiff and he could not move. He looked a little funny. Gu Dafeng praised him from the side. "You didn't scream loudly just now. I thought you were in so much pain that you couldn't scream anymore. It turns out that it didn't hurt much. In that case, Qiuyue is still the best. His technique was so unique that you didn't suffer much." Yundong was speechless. It was fine. She had to be strong. Even though the credit was given to Qiuyue, they were a couple and it was all right. Bianhan was a little embarrassed, but deep down he also felt that it was because Qiuyue took advantage of his distraction. It was just that after curing her leg, she felt a little sleepy, but it also hurt a little. She wanted to sleep, but she couldn't. It was uncomfortable. Yundong did not disturb them and quietly left the room. She returned to her room. Madame Yang and Yunke were waiting for news. When they heard that he was fine, the two of them instantly cheered. The mother and daughter hugged each other tightly and laughed foolishly. Yundong laughed, but the gloominess in her heart was more or less gone. After Qiuyue sent Dr. Xiong off, he left in a hurry. Yundong knew that he had gone to the cow farm and prepared to study the vaccination of cowpox. As expected, Qiuyue asked all the farmers in the farm. Not everyone had cowpox, but those who had it had indeed never been infected with smallpox. There was even a farmer who said that she had taken care of her daughter who had smallpox a few years ago. She was infected and had been healthy until now. When Qiuyue heard this, he became even more determined. Zhou, who had come with him, did not understand at first. However, after hearing young master's explanation, his eyes lit up. Young master, do you mean that having cowpox can really prevent smallpox? I'm not sure yet. It's just a guess at the moment. I still have to experiment after I understand a few more families. It's just that, how to test it was a problem. Even if he could try with animals in the early stages, what about later? Who would be the first to be infected with cowpox? Chapter 892. Zhou's background. This candidate was definitely voluntary. But who would be willing to try such a matter that concerned their lives? Qiuyue had smallpox when he was young, so even if he wanted to do it himself, it was impossible. Zhou seemed to have seen through his dilemma and immediately recommended himself. Young master, let me do it. Qiuyue looked at him. What did you say? I said I'll do it. He had no hesitation at all. He smiled and said, I believe in young master. Young master can even make his own medicine. Cowpox is definitely not a problem for you. Besides, didn't we ask just now? A person infected with cowpox won't be in danger. It doesn't matter if I'm infected. Qiuyue looked at him with a serious gaze. Then you know that it's not enough to infected with cowpox. If I want to know the results, you have to be infected with smallpox to see if it's really useful. Cowpox is fine, but what about smallpox? You might lose your life. Zhou smiled nonchalantly. It's not that serious. Even if it's smallpox, we can still treat it if we prepare in advance. Qiuyue frowned slightly. Clearly he still didn't agree. He turned around and walked out of the cow farm. Then, he went to other houses with cows and continued to learn about the situation of people who had cowpox. Along the way, Qiuyue didn't say anything else. Zhou was afraid that he would be angry, so he didn't dare to speak. He just followed behind him, looking like he wanted to say something but hesitated. The two of them got into the carriage and entered the city again. Zhou sat on the shaft of the carriage and rode. As his back was facing Qiuyue, he finally took a deep breath and said, Young master, actually, I'm also afraid of smallpox. I'm especially afraid. You don't know, but I used to have a younger brother who was just a few years younger than me. He just had smallpox when he was young and he died. His voice lowered by 2 degrees, but it also sounded like a laugh. Qiuyue couldn't see his expression, but he knew that he definitely wasn't feeling well. He continued, Smallpox is really too scary. Not only did my younger brother die, but even my parents contracted it while taking care of him. They both died. At that time, I happened to be in my grandfather's place and escaped a calamity. When I received the news and returned, the villagers scolded me. Because not only my parents and younger brother, but even 2 neighbors were in trouble. Master, don't you think smallpox is scary? Smallpox took my family away. I couldn't stay in the village anymore. I couldn't go to my grandfather's family either. I was completely alone. If I hadn't met Brother Mao and the others, I might have died now. I didn't even think about living such a good life now. Qiuyue was silent. Young master, if you had such a method back then, my parents wouldn't have left. I just want to do something so that I would feel better. In the future, no one will be like me. Besides, didn't you say that doctors taste hundreds of herbs? Physicians with brilliant medical skills all eat poison themselves. I learned medicine from them. Why can't I grow cow acne? Qiuyue now knew why Zhou was interested in studying medicine. Moreover, between the guard and the shop assistant, he had chosen to be a shop assistant. Young master, just agree. Qiuyue was expressionless. We'll talk about this later. Let's make sure that everyone who has cowpox hasn't contracted smallpox again. Zhou thought that it was fine. He would have a way to convince young master. Chapter 893. Yundong felt her face hurt. In the next few days, Qiuyue went to several houses who raised cows. The results were the same. But it wasn't enough. Perhaps geographical location was also relevant. They had to understand not only the entire Xuanhe prefecture, but also other places. Qiuyue would only take action after confirming that the other prefectural cities were in the same situation. However, there was no time now because his pharmacy was finally going to open. Unlike Yundong's Gus, the pharmacy was not publicized with great fanfare. That was not right. Dr. Xiong was the only one who went to promote the pharmacy. Over the past few days, he had visited almost all the medical centers in the Xuanhe prefecture city. In Dr. Xiong's words, the doctors in this prefecture city are so knowledgeable and broad-minded. Especially those doctors in the big medical centers. They are still very willing to spar with me. They won't be angry even if they lose. They're just a little unconvinced. They'll look for me next time. As for me, I told us the address of our pharmacy, and even asked them to introduce customers to our pharmacy later. Therefore, before the shop opened, the pharmacy was already famous. It's you who's famous, isn't it? Yundong did not have the strength to complain, but on the day of the opening, a few doctors really came. Yundong was speechless. Shouldn't these doctors be very busy? Dr. Xiong was also a very powerful person. How stupid was that medical center in the past to chase such a talent away? Just because he had a bad temper? Qiuyue set off a string of firecrackers. It was very lively, and everyone nearby knew that there was a pharmacy here. Dr. Xiong called for the few doctors to walk in, but they were unwilling. They waved their hands and looked at the shop. There was no telling if it was because they didn't like Dr. Xiong or something, but after a while, they started to pick on him. Your shop is too small. Old Xiong, you bragged to the sky back then. I've been waiting to see it. I'm a little disappointed. Me too. Sigh, as expected. I shouldn't have trusted you back then. Also, there's only one assistant in your shop. Can you handle it? There are 6 or 7 herb attendants in our medical center. Yundong felt her face hurt. Indeed, Dr. Xiong had friends who came to congratulate him. This was an illusion. These people must have been provoked by Dr. Xiong previously, and were here to take revenge, right? Looking at the 2 guests who had just entered, they looked at each other and wondered if they should just turn around and leave. You don't have a lot of medicine cabinets, and you don't have many medicinal herbs, right? One of the doctors said as he reached out to open the medicine cabinet on the left, and took a look. In the next moment, his eyes suddenly paused and he shouted, "Old Xiong." The others were shocked. What's wrong? What's wrong? Why are there so many herbs? Old Xiong, where did you buy the herbs in your pharmacy? The others came over to take a look. The doctor had already opened the medicine cabinet beside him. This is also full of boxes. Old Xiong, do you still have these herbs in the storeroom? Our medical center is very short of them. Hurry up and prepare some for me. Me too, us too. After the others took a look, they immediately fought to be the first to shout. One by one, they opened a few medicine cabinets and saw a few more precious and rare medicinal herbs. Their eyes immediately lit up like wolves seeing meat. They wished they could bring all the medicinal herbs in these medicine cabinets home. The customers in the pharmacy were all stunned. Were these doctors really the doctors from the medical centers they knew? Chapter 894. Something happened at home. Yundong felt. Her face hurt again. Alright, these doctors were indeed Dr. Xiong's friends. Look at how they suppressed their desires first. It was simply a big move for publicity. Did you see the customers watching the commotion outside the pharmacy? They all squeezed in. On the other hand, Dr. Xiong had a proud expression on his face. He rushed forward and slapped the hands of the doctors away. What are you doing? Stop it. Don't you have any manners? How can you open the medicine cabinets in other people's shops casually? If our medicine shop is missing something, will you be responsible? The doctor who was the first to make a move was a little embarrassed. They were indeed here to make Dr. Xiong uncomfortable. Who asked Dr. Xiong to be so disrespectful in the past? However, they really liked medicinal herbs too. Now that they saw these medicinal herbs, all of them seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. They did not care about anything else and only wanted to quickly obtain them. Old Xiong, this is our fault. I'm sorry, so do you have more medicinal herbs in your warehouse? Give me a sack. Me too. I want a sack too. Me too. Me too. Everyone looked at the last person who spoke. This person should be a guest who had just entered. He did not know the situation yet, but seeing that everyone was fighting to be the first to ask for something, he quickly echoed. Dr. Xiong's mouth twitched. What do you want? Are you guests of our shop? No, so these herbs are not for you. Alright, move aside. I'm going to entertain the guests. Hey old Xiong, don't say that. We're guests here today. Really? Dr. Xiong glanced at them from the corner of his eye. Sure. You're buying medicine, right? Bring the prescription over. If there's a prescription, they'll make the medicine. The few of them looked at each other. They were not sick or in pain. What prescription did they want? However, what they said just now had clearly offended Dr. Xiong. Seeing that he was unwilling to let the matter rest, they did not know what to do. Yundong watched and thought for a moment before whispering something to Tong Shuitao. Tong Shuitao immediately took out a brush and paper from behind the counter and silently handed it to one of the doctors. She winked at him. At first, the doctor did not understand. He thought that Tong Shuitao had feelings for him and was a little unhappy. However, when he saw the brush and paper in his hand, he immediately understood and immediately wrote on the counter. After a while, he wrote 3 prescriptions and handed them to Dr. Xiong. Come, prepare the medicine. He was a doctor. Wasn't it easy to write a prescription? Seeing this, the others immediately came to a realization and followed suit. Dr. Xiong had seen Tong Shuitao's actions just now. He also understood what Yundong meant. One still had to do business in a pharmacy. There was no reason to push money out. Therefore, although his face was dark, he still prepared the medicine quickly. On the first day of the opening, because of a few doctors looking for trouble, it became famous on the same day. Qiuyue saw that there was no problem with the pharmacy, so he said to Yundong, Tomorrow, I want to go to the cow farms in Qingan Prefecture to take a look. Yundong knew that he was focused on the vaccination of cowpox, so she nodded and said, Be careful. Don't worry. However, the next morning, before Qiuyue went out, a horse suddenly galloped over and stopped at the door of the small courtyard not long after. Someone got off the horse and anxiously knocked on the door. The moment he saw Yundong, he panted and said, Miss, something happened at home. Chapter 895. Someone wants to kill Yunshu. The person who came was an acquaintance called Zhou. He was the escort that Qiuyue had invited to teach Mao and the other 3 martial arts. His frown was very serious and Yundong's heart skipped a beat. What happened? Zhou looked around. Qiuyue understood and quickly got Lu Sheng to settle the horse first. Then he led him through the door, blocking the neighbors from peeking out when they heard the commotion. After entering, the 3 of them went straight to the central room. Zhou didn't see Dajiang. He should have gone to the academy, but Dafeng and the others were there. Hence he lowered his voice and whispered, Someone wants to kill young Master Yunshu. What did you say? Yundong suddenly looked up. Her expression changed drastically as she asked anxiously, How is Yunshu now? He's fine. It's just that. Zhou paused with a hint of pity. It's just that Tongan was stabbed in the abdomen while protecting Yunshu. His head was also smashed by a wooden stick. I was called over by Mr. Qin to inform you. Before I came, he was still unconscious. I don't know if Tongan is out of danger. He had set off yesterday evening. Although he had sped up, the city gate was still closed when he arrived at the prefectural city. Therefore, he waited until the city gate opened this morning before coming in. Then, he went straight to the small courtyard. Gu Yundong's fingers trembled slightly. Her voice was cold and her eyes were fierce. Who did this? It's the teacher who taught at Dongyi Academy previously. Gu Yundong and Qiuyue were stunned. The master of Dongyi Academy? When the two of them heard that someone wanted to kill Yunshu, and that Zhou was called over by Qin Wenjing, their first reaction was that the Tao family did it. How was the master of Dongyi Academy involved in this? Zhou said, Master Wei has been taken away by the government office and imprisoned. The exact cause will only be known after the county master interrogates him. Master Qin guessed that Master Wei was indignant after being chased away by Dongyi Academy. He must have deliberately taken revenge on young Master Yunshu. Gu Yundong nodded randomly. No matter the reason, the most important thing now was whether Tong'an was safe or not. She looked up and said to Qiuyue, "Oh, go back now. Go to the Huimin Medical Center and invite Dr. He to Fengkai County. Tong'an's head is injured, and Dr. He happens to be good at this." Okay. Only then did Gu Yundong walk out of the central room. She said to Gu Dafeng, who was looking over worriedly, "Eldest aunt, there's a problem with the family's business. Brother Xiao and I have to go back. Help me take care of my mother and the rest. When my father comes back, just tell him. Is everything all right?" Gu Dafeng asked worriedly. Gu Yundong shook her head. "It's fine. I can handle it." It was better not to let others know about this for the time being. The exact situation was still unclear, so it was best to prevent them from worrying. Zhou must have received instructions from Qin Wenjing to tell the two of them alone. With that, Gu Yundong left with Tong Shuitao. Qiuyue let Zhou rest for a while, and immediately led the carriage straight to Huimin Medical Center. Gu Yundong and Tong Shuitao went straight to Fengkai County. They left early, but it was already afternoon when they arrived at Fengkai County. Due to the proximity, Gu Yundong went straight to the county town's gus and found Zhuangzi. Zhuangzi definitely knew about such a serious matter. As expected, when she arrived at the shop, Zhuangzi hurriedly came out to welcome her. "Boss, you're back." Chapter 896. Is this their relationship? Gu Yundong asked. "How is Tong'an now? Is he in danger? Where is he now?" "Boss, don't be anxious. The doctor said that Tong'an's life is saved." Seeing that she was in a hurry and her voice was hoarse when she spoke, Zhuangzi quickly poured them 2 glasses of water. When Gu Yundong heard that his life was saved, she heaved a sigh of relief and drank a large glass of water. Seeing that she was breathing evenly, Zhuangzi continued, "But Tong'an has been unconscious and hasn't woken up." Gu Yundong frowned. Tong Shuitao was also flustered. Tong'an was her biological uncle. After hearing that he was injured, she had been on tenterhooks all the way and almost fell off her horse a few times. Zhuangzi said, "The doctor said that he injured his head. There have been such cases in the past, but we don't know how long Tong'an will be unconscious for. It's possible for him to be unconscious for a day or two, or even a month or two. The doctors in the county city don't have much experience in this aspect, so they don't dare to do anything. However, Master Qin said that he has already sent someone to inform the boss. The boss will definitely bring the doctors from the prefectural city over. He asked us to wait. Therefore, Tong'an has already been brought back to Yongfu village." Gu Yundong nodded. It seemed that she could only wait for elder brother Xiao to bring Dr. He over. What about that Master Wei who committed the crime? Did he explain why he wanted to harm Yunshu? Zhuangzi did not know about this. Mr. Qin is keeping an eye on the government office. Although he had also asked his friends in the county city, he did not find out anything for the time being. "I'll go look for Qin Wenjing first." "All right." Zhuangzi quickly stopped her. "Master Qin should be in Yongfu village now." Gu Yundong nodded and went out. She mounted her horse and immediately headed for Yongfu village. When she arrived at the entrance of the Gu residence, she saw Father Tong hurriedly welcome her. "Miss, you're back." As he spoke, he looked behind her. Gu Yundong knew what he was looking at and explained. "The doctor is at the back. Brother Xiao will bring him over later." Father Tong heaved a sigh of relief and quickly led the horse to the backyard. The atmosphere in the Gu residence was a little gloomy, perhaps because they heard the commotion outside. Yunshu and Yuanji quickly ran out. Big sister. The moment the little guy saw her, the emotions he had been holding back collapsed. He rushed over and hugged her waist tightly. Yundong squatted down and touched his head. It's all right. Eldest sister is back. Yunshu's eyes were slightly red and tears were rolling in them. Sister, Tongan was injured because he saved me. I know. Eldest sister has already called Dr. He over. He will save Tongan, don't worry. She hugged the little guy and knew that he must be feeling extremely guilty. She could not help but sigh slightly and get up to lead him inside. Qin Wenjung was also there. When he saw her return, he nodded slightly. Yundong went to see Tongan first. Tongan was lying quietly on the bed. He had already changed into clean clothes, and his forehead was still wrapped in gauze. His face was pale and bloodless. Other than elderly Lady Tong, Madame Cui, who was wiping her tears, there was also Shen Sitian in the house. To her surprise, Shen Sitian's tears did not stop. Her hand was still holding Tong An's hand tightly. Yundong was shocked. Although it was inappropriate, Yundong still felt that she was hallucinating when she saw this scene. When did the two of them have such a relationship? Chapter 897. He's here for me. Yundong shook her head, suppressed the doubts in her heart, and walked out again. Qin Wenjung stood at the door. Seeing her come out, he walked to the side. When she caught up, he said, I'm sorry this happened because of me. Yundong was stunned. What do you mean? Is there a result from the county office? Qin Wenjung nodded. Then Master Wei was originally targeting me. Master Wei was originally a teacher of Dongyi Academy, and had always thought highly of himself. Coupled with his kinship with the dean, he could be considered to have a very high status in the academy. Otherwise, why would he act so wantonly when the director was in the capital and not in Fengkai County? However, he did not expect that the consequences of his tyranny would actually ruin his future. The first time Yundong saw him, he had pressured Madame Gu at the entrance of Qin Wensheng's school, and almost caused her to fall and be injured. Although Master Wei was at a disadvantage in the end, Qin Wenjung doted on his wife. How could he really forgive someone who almost hurt his wife? Qin Wenjung would remember this debt. At this point, Qin Wenjung only wanted to find an opportunity to teach him a lesson. He did not really want him to pay any price. However, Master Wei courted death himself. Later on, he brought the students of Dongyi Academy and took advantage of Qin Wensheng's absence to challenge his students. Moreover, he had lost in public and became the laughingstock of the entire county. The acting director could not take it anymore and suspended his position as a teacher. This matter would wait until the director returned to Fengkai County. At that time, Master Wei had wanted to plead with the dean, but he did not expect the dean to know Qin Wensheng's identity. Qin Wenjung naturally would not show mercy to someone who had caused trouble for his wife and students several times. In addition, the dean was also dissatisfied with Master Wei's actions, so he completely chased him out of Dongyi Academy. He even issued an expulsion document and punished Master Wei in public in front of all the students in the academy. Master Wei had lost all face. He left the academy dejectedly. After returning home, he was even criticized by his neighbors. He was famous in the county, so it was impossible for him to teach elsewhere. Even his family was implicated by him, and was kept a respectful distance from. Because of this, Master Wei was extremely disliked at home. His wife, who used to be gentle and caring in front of him, seemed to have become a different person. Not only did she despise him all day, but she also slept in separate rooms with him. His family was also experiencing more and more difficulties. He no longer had any income as a teacher and could only eat surplus food. The food he ate also changed from fine food to coarse food. In the end, he could only eat until he was half full. Day after day, the conflict in the family deepened. Master Wei's temperament became more and more gloomy, and he slowly began to drink. Last time, he stole money and was discovered by his wife. Then he hit his wife. His wife exploded and went back to find her brother. In turn, her brother beat up Master Wei and almost beat him to death. He lay in bed for half a month to recover. Alright, he did not dare to touch his wife, but he had to vent the anger in his heart. Hence he targeted Qin Wenjung. Master Wei felt that his current situation was all because of Qin Wenjung. Yesterday, after drinking a little, he began to gather his courage. He picked up a pair of sharp scissors and left. Chapter 898. No such reason Master Wei went to the entrance of Qin Wenheng's school, because he wanted to rush up and cut him when he came out. However, he waited for 2 hours, and Qin Wenheng did not come out. He wanted to go in, but there was a gatekeeper guarding outside, so he never found an opportunity. At this moment, the school ended and Yunshu and Yuanji came out. Coincidentally, Father Tong was not feeling well yesterday, so the person who picked them up was Tong, and Yunshu and Yuanji were the last to come out. Because Nyodan had also come to the county city to study, they wanted to go back together every day. The three of them were good friends and could not wait to travel together. It was just that Dongyi Academy ended later, so Yunshu and the other student were not in a hurry to set off. They would wait for the other students in the academy to leave before going to Dongyi Academy to pick Nyodan up. When the two of them ran to the carriage, they happened to mention the Dongyi Academy. Master Wei, who was standing not far away, immediately turned his attention to them. He looked at Yunshu and thought of how the kid had embarrassed him back then. He also thought of how the kid's sister, Yundong, had embarrassed him. He felt that these two people had also contributed greatly to everything he had encountered today. At that moment, hatred surged and he was drunk. Without thinking, he rushed towards Yunshu. Tongan had just carried Yuanji into the carriage when he turned around and saw Master Wei stabbing at Yunshu with a pair of scissors. His expression changed drastically on the spot. Without thinking, he picked Yunshu up and dodged the pair of scissors. However, Master Wei could not stop himself. The scissors pierced into Tong An's body due to inertia. Tongan cried out in pain. He still remembered to put Yunshu down carefully at a time like this. The moment Master Wei saw the blood, he suddenly woke up. Especially since the person he stabbed was actually a stranger. This made him subconsciously look at Yunshu. However, this glance made Tongan think that Master Wei was still unwilling to give up and planned to harm Yunshu again. Therefore, when Master Wei was about to escape, he grabbed his hand and asked Yunshu to hurry and call for help. Master Wei panicked, especially when he saw that someone was already running over. Without thinking, he picked up a wooden stick from the ground and slapped him hard on the head. In a moment of desperation, he hit Tongan hard and ruthlessly. Tongan only saw a blur before her eyes, and he fell straight back. Fortunately, at this moment, the gatekeeper of the Qin family ran over from afar. The people on the street who heard the commotion also ran over. Master Wei was arrested, but Tongan was unconscious. He was sent to the nearest medical center. The doctor stopped the bleeding and bandaged his wound, but there was nothing he could do about the wound on his head. Yunshu quickly went to Shaoqing Yuan's pharmacy to invite the old doctor over, but after the old doctor saw it, he gave the same conclusion. Head injuries had always been complicated. Physicians who were not proficient in this aspect did not dare to inject rashly. Yunshu blamed himself very much. He saw clearly that Master Wei was coming for him. Tongan was injured to save him, and he didn't wake up. For the entire night, he did not dare to sleep. He was afraid that Tongan would leave without realizing it. His small body was tense all the way until Yundong returned. Qin Wenheng's voice was deep. He originally came for me. You don't have to blame yourself too much. He touched Yunshu's little head. This matter was completely caused by Master Wei venting his anger. What had Yunshu done? He had only retaliated when Master Wei made things difficult for him. Could it be that Master Wei was the only one who could bully him, and he was not allowed to refute? There was no such logic. Chapter 899. Dr. He is here. Yundong also said. Master Wei is at fault in this matter. What we have to do now is to do our best to treat Tongan and punish the murderer according to law to avenge Tongan. Yunshu pouted slightly and nodded. I understand, big sister. They didn't know when Tong Ping had come over. Ever since Tongan was injured yesterday, the only thing he could do as a big brother was to help him do his job well. Eldest Miss was not around, and young master was still young. Tongan had always been in charge of the workshop. Tong Ping was worried that Tong An's injury would affect the workshop and make everyone panic. Therefore, although he was also worried about Tong An's health, he still went to the workshop early in the morning to stabilize the situation. At this moment, he looked a little haggard. Yundong nodded at him. Thank you for your hard work. I'm fine. This is what I should do in the first place. Tong Ping often ran around outside now, so he was already much more reliable. I won't let the workshop be in chaos. Miss, don't worry. When Tong'an wakes up, he can also be at ease. After a pause, he looked at Yunshu. Young master, on the other hand, you didn't sleep last night. If this continues, I'm afraid you won't be able to take it. Yundong lowered her head. The child shook his head quickly. I'm not sleepy at all. You still have to sleep. Yundong carried him up and walked towards the room. Children won't grow tall if they don't sleep. But Tong'an. Yundong placed him on the bed and took off his shoes and jacket. She covered him with the blanket and patted him gently. Big sister is here. Big sis is here. These words seemed to have magic to Yunshu. In the past, when they were escaping from the famine, Yundong had always said that eldest sister was around. With eldest sister around, he could finally relax. With eldest sister around, he finally did not have to work hard to support everything with his small shoulders and endure it. The child's tears fell. He wiped them away with the back of his hand and hummed softly with a nasal voice. Then he pulled the blanket up and closed his eyes after covering most of his face. After all, he had not slept for the entire night. The fatigue in his body quickly surged. Yundong patted the blanket gently, and he fell asleep in no time. Only then did Yundong gently pull the blanket down, revealing a slightly red face. After a long time, she gently left the room. Yuanji, who was also worried, stood outside the door. Is Yunshu asleep? Yes, he's asleep. You didn't rest well either, right? Go and sleep. Yuanji nodded heavily before quietly entering the house. He carefully lifted the blanket and crawled into bed. The two children slept side by side, and felt the entire room become warm. Yundong gently closed the door. When she turned around, her expression darkened. Qin Wenjung was still standing at his original spot, waiting for her. When he saw her coming over, he said, "Oh, keep an eye on the government office. Don't worry, I won't let him have an easy time." Yeah. Only then did Qin Wenjung leave. With Yundong around, there was no need to worry too much. When it was almost evening, Qiuyue finally returned. Dr. He came back with him. Dr. He seemed to be in a bad state. When he arrived at the Gu residence, his legs were weak. Yundong was surprised. Didn't you take a carriage? Dr. He turned around and glared at Qiuyue, almost falling forward. Qiuyue reached out to support him expressionlessly and pushed him forward. Chapter 900. There's nothing wrong with that. Where is Tong'an? Qiuyue asked. Yundong pointed ahead. In his own room. Qiuyue was about to lead Dr. He over when Yundong hurriedly stopped him. Wait, how can Dr. He treat someone under such circumstances? His hands are trembling. Don't make a mistake and ruin things. The few people including Madame Cui who happened to hear the commotion outside heard this, and did not come forward. Dr. He panted and said, Yundong is the most sensible. Look at the person you found. Really, he almost took my life. Dr. He, you rode a horse too? Tong Ping brought a chair over for Dr. He and poured water for him. When he recovered, he said, I was originally in the carriage, but Qiuyue, this kid, was almost at the entrance of the county city. He suddenly despised the speed of the carriage, and pulled me onto the horse's back. Then he rushed over. Yundong looked at Qiuyue suspiciously. The latter had a good reason. Dr. He, you're not used to sitting in a carriage. The journey is too slow. If we don't ride into the city at the last moment, the city gate will be closed. We can only reach Yongfu village tomorrow. There was nothing wrong with that. Yundong coughed lightly. Dr. He, you must be tired. Dr. He snorted coldly. Fortunately, he had a gentle personality. Although he was angry, he knew that saving people was more important. He let it go after complaining a little. He was already old, so he would not argue with this kid. Dr. He waved his hand magnanimously. All right, bring me to the patient first. Are you done resting? More or less. Actually, Qiuyue's speed was already much slower on the way into the village. Dr. He was still supported by Qiuyue. Tong Ping immediately went forward to support his other side, making him look like a seriously ill patient. Yundong followed them into the room and sighed slightly when she saw Shinsitian. She was still here. It was only when Madame Qiuyue told her that the doctor was here that she stood up, wiped her face, and moved to the side. Doctor, he removed the gauze on Tong An's head and took his pulse. He nodded slightly. How is it? Shen Sitian asked anxiously. Doctor, he said. Well, although it's a little serious, it can be treated. The people in the room immediately looked happy. It's good that it can be treated. That's great. Doctor, he said. Oh, get ready. Oh, give him acupuncture tomorrow. Tomorrow? Can't we do it today? Madame Qiuyue asked softly. She was very worried. She hoped that her son would wake up as soon as possible. Otherwise, she would be worried and unable to eat or sleep well. Doctor, he knew that they were anxious, but he pointed at the sky outside. It's already so late. I can't even see clearly. How can it be easy to perform acupuncture? As he spoke, he glanced at Qiuyue meaningfully. See, even if you rush me into the city today, it's still useless. Qiuyue pretended not to see his gaze. When the others heard Dr. He's explanation, although they were a little disappointed, they were still very happy to know that Tong'an was fine. Shen Sitian also heaved a sigh of relief. After all, she had not slept for a day and night. Coupled with the fact that her body had been tense, she could not take it anymore and her body swayed. Yundong quickly took a step forward and held her back. You should rest too. Thank you. Shen Sitian wiped her face and finally revealed a smile. If you hadn't brought Dr. He over, Tong'an would probably. Yundong looked at her and a thought suddenly flashed across her mind. Chapter 901. Concern. This thought ran through Yundong's mind for a moment before she temporarily suppressed it. There was no hurry. She would treat Tong'an first and ask him when he woke up. With his contributions this time, it was not impossible to remove his servant status. Dr. He temporarily settled down in the Gu residence. Madame Qiuyue tidied up the guest room for him and came out. Dr. He had been on the road for the entire day and rested after dinner. The next morning, under everyone's eager anticipation, he carried the first aid kit and focused on performing acupuncture for Tong'an. Apart from Tong Ping, who was his assistant, everyone else was waiting outside. Yunshu and Yuanji squatted on the ground, hugging Big Black and staring at the door. Yundong watched from behind. She knew that the two children were anxious, so she did not persuade them. After half a day, there was a slight sound in the house. When Tong Ping opened the door, Dr. He walked out while wiping his sweat. Doctor, how is Tong'an? Madame Qiuyue was the first to go up and ask. Dr. He said, he's fine. If nothing goes wrong, he'll wake up tonight. Joy instantly flashed across everyone's faces. Yunshu and Yuanji heaved a long sigh of relief and completely smiled. Since Tong'an was fine, the others no longer stayed in the room. Yundong sent the two children back to their rooms to read while she went to the workshop in the village. She had come back in a hurry yesterday and was worried about Yunshu and Tong'an, so she did not go out. Now Tong'an was in charge of the workshop. Since he was unconscious, she naturally had to go and take a look. There were more than 100 workers in the workshop now. Ever since they recruited 50 long-term workers last time, the workshop had become much livelier. In particular, many people came from other villages that were too far, and it was inconvenient to go back. The row of dormitories behind the workshop was used. When Yundong went over, many people immediately surrounded her and asked about Tong An's situation with concern. Boss, is Steward Tong all right? Boss, have you caught the perpetrator? Boss, if there's anything you need our help with, just tell us. Most of the people who asked questions were the long-term workers from before. They were more familiar with her and dared to speak in front of her. Although the people who came later were also concerned, they still stood a distance away. Yundong answered the questions one by one. She watched as everyone in the workshop worked in an orderly manner. Even though Tong'an was not around, no one seemed to be slacking off. It seemed that Tong'an had indeed managed it very well. After walking past the jam area, Yundong went to the dried fruits area. Finally, she arrived at the sugar production room. Since the sugar cane matured this year, the production of white sugar was naturally on the agenda. This time, she did not do it herself, nor did she leave the last step in the Gu family's backyard. In the beginning, Gu Yundong had estimated that the production of white sugar could be monopolized for 2 to 3 years. After that, it would definitely become more and more common. Now that the imperial court was controlling it, no one dared to brazenly sell white sugar. However, Qin Wenzheng had told her that there were already people in the capital who had secretly made them. It was just that under the emperor's nose, these people would only use them for themselves and would not dare to sell them. The emperor would turn a blind eye to such small actions. Although Gu Yundong did not expect to always monopolize the technology, the current production in this area was still in the hands of people she trusted. In the sugar area, the Zheng couple and the group of people who had worked with her for a short time were all busy.